Chapter 634. Looking at Shin Qingyun's departing figure, Peng Tianyu and the others heaved a sigh of relief. That little brat is finally gone. Oh right, I heard that senior sister Shin is a demon in the inner sect. She was quite nice these few days, except for the first few days. Qing Yang suddenly scratched his head and said, if that's the case, I feel that senior sister Shin is quite cute. Are you that stupid? Peng Tianyu, Liao Jingyu and the others suddenly laughed and looked at Lin Yi strangely. Hong Ling covered her mouth and laughed. Senior sister Shin is just paying attention to her image in front of someone. Paying attention to her image? Noticing Peng Tianyu and the others teasing, Lin Yi shrugged and said helplessly, I can't tell. Alright, let's not talk about this. When are you going to look for Elder Lu to get your rewards? Let's go now. Peng Tianyu said in a deep voice, we have bought many things in this auction. After we get our points, we will be in seclusion for a while. That's right. After we are done with our seclusion, we will give you the Saint Stones. Qing Yang and the others thanked him again. It's fine. Lin Yi shook his head and chuckled. He immediately rushed towards the Elixir Pavilion. When they arrived at the Elixir Pavilion, the sky was getting dark and many people were coming out of the Elixir Pavilion. The Elixir Pavilion was different from other places. At night, the people outside the Elixir Pavilion would be asked to leave, leaving only the Elixir Pavilion disciples to cultivate. Senior Brother Peng, you are here. When the Elixir Pavilion disciples saw Peng Tianyu, Qing Yang and the others, they quickly greeted them. Peng Tianyu and the others were the top 50 geniuses on the Transforming Saint board. Naturally, the disciples treated them with respect. Is Elder Lu here? Peng Tianyu and the others asked after exchanging a few pleasantries. Elder Lu is still in the secret chamber. Do you need me to inform him? The few disciples were very polite. No need. Junior brothers, please continue with your work. We have some matters to discuss with Elder Lu. We will come out after we are done. There's no rush. As they spoke, a few students directly sent Lin Yi and the others into the Elixir Pavilion. This made Lin Yi quite surprised. Sure enough, as long as one was strong enough, no matter where one went, it would be easy to do things. They arrived at Elder Lu's secret chamber with ease. Before Lin Yi and the others could knock on the door, the stone door opened by itself. A voice sounded out, come in, little fellows. Lin Yi, Peng Tianyu, and the others looked at each other and praised Elder Lu's strength before entering the stone room. Elder Lu sized them up and suddenly smiled. Elder Bai has already told me what happened. This time, your performance was very good. Little guys, everyone's points reward will be doubled. Really? Hearing this, Peng Tianyu and the others were overjoyed. The points for this mission were not low to begin with. If the points were doubled, it would be a pleasant surprise. Of course it's true. Elder Lu chuckled. Do you think we, the elders, would lie to you? Give me your hands and I'll give you the points. As soon as he finished speaking, Peng Tianyu and the others stretched out their hands in unison. Lin Yi shook his head with a smile and also stretched out his hand. Swoosh! Elder Lu waved his right hand. In the next moment, Lin Yi felt his body warm up. There was an indescribable feeling in his heart. He quickly looked up at Elder Lu, only to see Elder Lu looking at him with a smile. After being stunned for a moment, Peng Tianyu and the others were overjoyed. Oh my God, 500,000 points. Although the mission this time took a long time, it was really worth it. Hearing this, Lin Yi realized the huge amount of points and could not help but be surprised. According to Peng Tianyu and the others, the previous mission reward was about 100,000 points. A little more would be 150,000 points. However, the mission this time had a huge reward of 500,000 points, which surprised him. Little guy, I know you've gained a lot this time. After receiving the points reward, hurry up and go into seclusion. Elder Lu smiled and said, after this mission, you don't have to come to me for a while. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Lu did not chase them away. He continued to refine pills. Seeing this, Lin Yi and the others looked at each other, bowed, and left the stone room. After leaving, Peng Tianyu and the others had not yet recovered from their ecstasy. They were still excited. I didn't expect the elder to be so generous this time. 500,000 points, that's enough for me to exchange for a bottle of God's summoning pills. Hee, I can squander for a while. I don't have to think about points anymore. After the ecstasy, Peng Tianyu and the others left the Elixir Pavilion. They exchanged greetings with the Elixir Pavilion students for a while before parting ways. Lin Yi also rushed to his residence. On the way, he called out to Biluo. "Phew, that elder just now helped you recover some of your soul power," Biluo said, her voice full of surprise. "I didn't expect there to be so many experts hidden in Cebu Gakuen. Although his strength is not as strong as Flawless White, I'm afraid he's not much weaker. He's even stronger than Li Moyun." "Hiss! Elder Lu helped me recover my soul power?" Hearing this, Lin Yi was also stunned. A warm current flowed through his heart. Obviously, after Elder Lu noticed that something was wrong with Lin Yi, he took advantage of the opportunity of giving them points to help him recover some of his soul power. "Phew, with the Elder's help, your sea of consciousness and the ninefold space are now much more stable." Biluo sighed softly. "The chaotic divine tree and origin source heavenly water are also beginning to recover. However, you still have to find some herbs to recover your soul power as soon as possible. Originally, the herbs that I got from the auction were enough for me to recover a lot of my soul power. Now, it seems that if I refine all of them, it'll be a problem whether you can recover your soul power. The ruins that we're going to this time were left behind by the Divine Will Heavenly Saint. I reckon we'll get many treasures related to the soul. We'll talk about it when the time comes." Slightly nodding his head, Lin Ye's heart also became anxious as he quickly rushed back to his residence. After returning to his residence, Lin Yi did not go back directly. Instead, he turned around and patted the array that covered Qingyue's residence. Soon, the formation dissipated and the door opened. Lin Yi walked in without any hesitation. However, as soon as he stepped into the courtyard, a surging divine sense pressure came crashing over like a giant wolf. "Qingyue, stop!" Sensing this, Lin Ye's face changed drastically and he quickly retreated. However, how fast was the divine will attack? In the instant that Lin Yi retreated, the surging divine sense attack had already slammed into Lin Ye's body. Humph! With a groan, Lin Yi felt as if his body was hit by a huge wave. He did not have any strength to resist, and was directly sent flying out, slamming heavily into the wall. In an instant, Lin Yi was furious. He raised his head and stared at Qingyue. He did not expect Qingyue to really kill him. Chapter 635. Why didn't you retaliate? Qingyue frowned slightly. Suddenly, her expression changed and she exclaimed, "That's not right. Why is the divine sense in your body gone?" Cough, cough. Coughing lightly, Lin Yi got up slowly and glared at Qingyue. "Qingyue, you bastard. You really went all out. Luckily, my physique is strong enough. Otherwise, if an ordinary person received this attack, they would be seriously injured even if they didn't die." The corner of Qingyue's mouth twitched as she waved her right hand. A green light floated and slowly landed on Lin Ye's body, healing his injuries. "Lin Yi, why is your divine sense gone?" Qingyue frowned and said, "Could it be that you're worried about losing to me, so you purposely dispersed your divine sense?" As everyone knew, divine sense could only be dispersed by oneself. No one else could interfere with it. This was the terror of a divine sense saint. "How is that possible?" Lin Yi grinned and said, "When I went out for a mission and encountered danger, I could only self-destruct my divine sense." Raising her brows, Qingyue smiled and said, "For such a dangerous mission, the reward must be very generous, right?" "It's all right. 500,000 points." Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders and was about to speak when Qingyue leaped up to him with a swoosh. Her eyes flashed as she asked, "How many points did you say? 500,000 points?" Hiss. "If there are such missions in the future, remember to introduce them to me." Qingyu grabbed Lin Ye's arm tightly, her big watery eyes flashing, looking rather adorable. His mouth twitching, Lin Yi was stunned. He didn't expect that Qingyu, who had always been cold, could make such an adorable expression. The more one cultivated and lived in Cebu Gakuen, the more one felt the importance of points. Therefore, when she heard that a mission had a reward of 500,000 points, even Qingyu couldn't stay calm. Cough cough. "All right, I'll definitely call you next time," Lin Yi hurriedly agreed. Only then did Qingyu let go of her hand, revealing her canine teeth, looking especially cute. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi couldn't help but sigh in his heart. A beautiful woman, no matter if she was cold or aloof, once she acted cute, her killing power was simply too great. "I'm here to ask you when we're going to explore the ruins," Lin Yi said in a deep voice. "My divine sense is damaged. Perhaps there will be a way for me to recover in the ruins." "If you haven't recovered yet, we still have to go?" Qing Yu's eyes darted around as she said softly, "This time around, other than you, the others are all outer court disciples. All of them have strength comparable to the great sage. If you can't use your spiritual sense, I'm afraid they'll look down on you." "I'm fine," Lin Yi grinned. "My strength isn't just limited to my divine sense." "Oh right, can I pull in another person? She's also a student of the inner yard, and she's very powerful." "Oh." Qingyu frowned slightly, feeling very unwilling. However, since Lin Yi had said so, she couldn't refuse. She could only grit her teeth and ask, "What's her realm?" "Invincible Saint Realm. However, when I was on a mission with her, I once defeated a mid-stage great sage by myself." "Sure." Slightly surprised, Qingyu gritted her teeth and said, "Since you said so, then pull her over. However, you're not allowed to pull anyone else in the future. There are already many of us going to explore the ruins. If there are more people, how are we going to split the treasures? We can't possibly fight, right?" With that, Qingyu rolled her eyes. Cough cough. Lin Yi smiled awkwardly. "Don't worry. I only want things to recover my soul and divine sense in the ruins this time. I don't want anything else." "All right, then I'll go and talk to them and set a time." Qingyu hesitated for a moment and suddenly asked, "Are you sure you don't want to delay it for a few days? With your current strength, I'm really worried." "Don't worry. Give me a night and I'll be able to recover some of my strength. By then, I'll have nothing to fear," Lin Yi said in a deep voice. "It's best to do it as soon as possible. This time, my soul and divine sense were almost shattered. Without treasures, it'll be very difficult to completely recover." "All right then." Hearing that, Qingyu pursed her lips and said, "Then you'd better hurry. By then, if they don't acknowledge you and ostracize you, I won't help you." "Ha, how can they not acknowledge me?" Shrugging, Lin Yi turned and left. He waved his hand and said, "Let me know after you've confirmed the time. I'll pass the news to my friends." "Okay," Qingyu responded. However, the way she looked at Lin Yi turned strange. After Lin Yi left, Qingyu waved her hand and closed the array. However, she muttered, "Strange. If an ordinary divine sense saint self-destructs their divine sense, they won't be able to recover for eternity. Why can he recover? And why does his divine sense give me an extremely dangerous feeling even though he doesn't have any divine sense in his sea of consciousness?" Returning to the courtyard, Silent Soul and Sun Wuyu were not around. Lin Yi activated the spirit-gathering array and began to recover from his injuries. Returning to the ninefold space, Lin Yi heaved a sigh of relief. The originally deathly silent scene had changed. The origin source heavenly water flowed and surrounded the Chaos Divine Tree, blooming with radiance. On the Chaos Divine Tree, the egg once again activated the power of laws and nestled in Biluo's arms. However, the power of laws on it was much weaker than before. Evidently, Elder Lu had helped him a lot. My previous estimation was wrong. It's best to completely recover within half a month. Biluo glanced at Lin Yi and shrugged helplessly. What? Hearing that, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. Didn't Elder Lu help me recover some of my soul power? Why did the recovery time decrease instead? Phew, the Chaos Divine Tree and Origin Source Heavenly Water, as well as this space, have recovered. Biluo said helplessly. However, after activating the power of laws again, the egg can't do it anymore. It has long been used to the power of laws from before. Now that it suddenly slows down, the power of laws can't keep up. It's fine for a short period of time, but after half a month, it might become useless. If it's really an auspicious beast, it definitely can't become useless. An auspicious beast is where the destiny of a continent lies. What? An auspicious beast is where the destiny of a continent lies? The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. Looking at the egg, his expression suddenly changed. That's right, Biluo said in a deep voice. An auspicious beast is an auspicious sign of heaven and earth. It's also the destiny of a continent. When an auspicious beast exists, the entire continent will be much more stable. Moreover, there's a certain chance of people breaking through the shackles of the continent and ascending to a higher world. However, if something happens to the auspicious sign, the entire continent will be sealed. There might even be a calamity of heaven and earth. Baidu search 81 Chinese Networko. No advertising message. Chapter 636. A Great Calamity? With his mouth slightly agape, Lin Yi glanced at the egg that was absorbing the power of laws with a strange expression. Should he say that he was lucky or unlucky? The auspicious sign of heaven and earth, that kind of divine beast-level existence, actually fell into his hands so easily. Unfortunately, now that his soul and divine sense had collapsed, he could not support the Chaos Divine Tree. If something happened to the auspicious sign because of this, then it would be over. If it is really an auspicious sign, then we must protect it well. Biluo said in a low voice, hurry up and recover. Okay. Lin Yi did not hesitate anymore. He immediately took out some holy herbs and swallowed them. For efficiency, Lin Yi swallowed several holy herbs at once. The holy power in his body suddenly erupted, refining the power of those herbs. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, pure power, like a spring breeze, brushed Lin Ye's body and healed his injuries. A full month had passed, and Lin Yi had finished refining all the holy herbs. Lin Ye's divine telekinesis had finally recovered a little. His divine telekinesis had recovered to the level of a first-grade divine telekinesis. Although it was still weak, he could now use the power of his divine telekinesis. Being able to use divine sense, the speed of recovery was much faster. Lin Yi used divine sense to refine those holy herbs, and the speed was more than 10 times faster than before. 10 days, half a month, 1 month. Another 1.5 months passed, and Lin Ye's divine sense recovered to about level 20. However, most of the herbs used for recovery had been used up. This made Lin Yi very puzzled. Those holy herbs were originally used to consolidate soul power and divine sense. Now that they were used to recover divine sense, they could not be of much use at all. However, if he did not use these holy herbs, it would be even more difficult for Lin Yi to recover. Opening his eyes, Lin Yi looked at Biluo, who was not far away, with a grave expression. Originally, he thought that after all the herbs were refined, he could recover to level 30 or even level 40. However, now it seemed that it would not be easy to recover to level 25. Phew, the effect of these herbs is to consolidate divine sense, not to recover. Using them to recover is too wasteful. Lin Yi sighed. If I give these herbs to you, you might be able to recover a lot of strength. But there is no choice. Biluo shrugged and suddenly said, By the way, I've calculated that you have to restore your spirit sense to the 55th order within half a month. Otherwise, you won't have enough power to activate the 5 types of laws, and you won't be able to let the auspicious sign live. Hiss, half a month to recover to level 55. Looks like I have to get all the points. Clenching his teeth, Lin Yi immediately exited his cultivation state. At this moment, Solitary Spirit and the others had returned, and he could no longer cultivate. At the same time, he also wanted to see how many points Solitary Spirit and the others had that he could use. Just as he exited his cultivation state, Solitary Spirit and Sun Wuyu entered his room. Captain Gongzi, you're back. Seeing Lin Yi, the 2 Silent Soul were ecstatic and quickly bowed. Lin Yi looked at the 2 and was very satisfied. Silent Soul had already broken through to 8th Tribulation Half-True Saint, and the speed of his breakthrough surprised him. Although Sun Wuyu was still a late-stage saint, his understanding of the domain had reached a new level, and he could break through the shackles at any time. Not bad, both of you have improved a lot. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi smiled and said, How is the Heavenly Sword sex development? Captain, your body? However, Sun Wuyu did not answer Lin Yi's question. Instead, he carefully looked at Lin Yi and asked, You seem to be injured, are you okay? What happened to young master? Hearing this, Silent Soul suddenly became nervous. I'm fine. Lin Yi shook his head and said, I'll recover in a few days. Okay, don't worry, how is the Heavenly Sword sex development? Sun Wuyu and Silent Soul carefully looked at Lin Yi. Seeing that he did not seem to be joking, they were relieved and told Lin Yi everything that had happened during this period of time. It had to be said that there was strength in numbers. As time passed, more and more new students broke through to the Saint realm, and the gap between them and the older students gradually narrowed. Due to the changes in the system this year, thousands of new students joined the Heavenly Sword sect. As a result, the Heavenly Sword sect's strength became extremely strong. Except for the few forces with peak saints, the other forces did not dare to act rashly with the Heavenly Sword sect. Not only that, the Heavenly Sword sect's various rules and regulations were now very complete, which gave Lin Yi a pleasant surprise. In the beginning, they needed to spend their own points to run the Heavenly Sword sect. But now, the points were starting to accumulate. Except for Lin Yi, Qin Yue, Shangguan Yunqi, Mui, and Yan Shihao all benefited. A conservative estimate was that they could get about 300,000 points every month. Young Master, during this period of time, your points have already reached 600,000. Silent Soul smiled brightly. Also, the Heavenly Sword sect's operating points have already reached 10 million. Hiss, 10 million points. The corner of his mouth twitched. Lin Yi was finally surprised. But after thinking about it carefully, Lin Yi was not surprised. To one person, 10 million points was indeed a huge sum, but there were more than 6,000 people in the Heavenly Sword sect. After conversion, each person only had a few thousand points. Phew! Letting out a long sigh, Lin Yi said in a deep voice, If possible, tell Shangguan Yunqi and the others that we, the administrators, try not to get too many points. It's best to give out the points as benefit. Brother Shangguan said the same. Silent Soul nodded. So, after discussing, we decided to give most of the extra points to the students. We will only take 5%. Hiss, 5% is so much? Lin Yi touched his nose and was quite surprised. Sure enough, there was strength in numbers. Seeing that the Heavenly Sword sect had so many operating points, Lin Yi suddenly had an idea in his mind. If he used the operating points, he might be able to exchange for enough sacred medicine to let Lin Yi recover. But if he did that, there might not be enough time. Unless he could get some treasures that specialized in recovering the soul and divine sense. Give me all the points. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi had already made up his mind to go to the Saint Depository Pavilion to see if there were any treasures that could recover the soul. If there were, he would buy it no matter how many points he had to spend. Originally, he could still wait for time to recover slowly, but the auspicious beast could not wait. Give it all to you? Silent Soul did not hesitate. He blinked his eyes and transferred all the points to Lin Yi. In a split second, Lin Yi only felt that his right hand had become much heavier. 10 million points, that was 10 million points. Hundreds of thousands of points were enough to make the students go crazy. With 10 million points on him, even if Lin Yi had been through a lot, he could not help but tremble. Baidu search Xing 81 Chinese Networko. No advertising message. Chapter 637. Phew, you guys continue. I'm going to the Hidden Saint Pavilion. Lin Yi grinned and walked towards the door. Gongzi, you need to leave at least 2 million points for me. Silent Soul quickly said, the Sky Rapier Gate needs a lot of points to operate. Lin Yi didn't want the Sky Rapier Gate to be unable to operate, so he transferred another 5 million points back. I'll use 5 million first, I'll make up for it later. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi immediately left the room. Looking at Lin Ye's back, Sun Wuyu suddenly said, Captain's injuries aren't light, or else he wouldn't have used the Sky Rapier Gate's points. Hearing this, Solitary Spirit finally reacted. In the past, Lin Yi would rather spend points for the Sky Rapier Gate. Why would he use the points for nothing? Then wouldn't I be delaying Gongzi's recovery? Silent Soul bit his lips and wanted to chase after Lin Yi. What are you doing? Sun Wuyu grabbed Silent Soul. Silent Soul turned around and blinked. Of course I'm going to give the points to Gongzi. Captain already gave you the points, why would you still want them? Sun Wuyu glanced at Silent Soul and shook his head. Trust Captain, he'll be able to solve this. Okay, Silent Soul sighed and his face was filled with worry. Lin Yi had just left the courtyard when he saw Qin Yu walking out. What a coincidence, where are you going? Seeing Lin Yi, Qin Yu was stunned and said in a bad mood, You're not even fully recovered yet and you're going to run around? Cough cough. Lin Yi grinned and said, I'm going to the Hidden Saint Pavilion. Exchange for sacred elixirs? Qin Yu blinked and didn't say anything else. She only said in a low voice, The time has been set, they'll all be busy soon, so I can only postpone it to the morning of the day after tomorrow. There's still more than a day for you to recover. Thank you. Hearing this, Lin Yi felt a warm current flowing through his heart. More than a day's time was enough for him to recover a lot of his divine willpower. By then, although he wouldn't be able to fully recover, it shouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with an invincible saint. What's more, he still had his spiritual sense treasure. If he really couldn't handle it, he could just use all of his tricks. He might not be a match for those guys. In the morning of the day after tomorrow, we will meet beside the Heavenly Thunder Realm. The place we are going to is closer to the Heavenly Thunder Realm. Also, when the person you invited arrives, they might test her. Qin Yu stared at Lin Yi. No problem. With a grin, Lin Yi made a hand gesture and ran towards the Saint Depository Pavilion. Phew, Qin Yu heaved a sigh of relief, her expression strange. On the way, Lin Yi took out a piece of paper and wrote a line of words on it. A moment later, the paper turned into golden light and suddenly floated into the distance. That piece of golden paper was given to him by Shin Qinyun to let Lin Yi pass the message. This method is not bad. Touching his nose, Lin Yi made up his mind. In the future, he must let Shin Qinyun teach him this method. After the message was passed, Lin Yi suddenly sped up and quickly arrived at the Saint Depository Pavilion. There were still many people around the Saint Depository Pavilion. When the students saw Lin Yi, they all began to talk and salute. They were extremely respectful to Lin Yi. Lin Yi responded with a smile and stepped straight into the Saint Depository Pavilion. After entering the Saint Depository Pavilion, Lin Yi didn't hesitate and went straight to the 10th floor. It was too slow to search one by one. It was purely a waste of time. Chen Daoxian stayed in the Saint Depository Pavilion all year round. Wouldn't it be more convenient to ask him directly? Furthermore, Chun Daoxuan's strength was profound and unfathomable. Although he had been conned when he changed his cultivation method, and his strength had fallen to the great sage level, he had given up everything to raise his cultivation base. This alone was enough to prove how powerful Chun Daoxuan's divine will was. Perhaps Chun Daoxian knew a faster way to restore the soul and divine sense. Stepping on the stairs to the 11th floor, Lin Ye's body was unstable and his consciousness was in a trance. What's going on? In an instant, Lin Yi was shocked. Just as he was about to retreat, he felt a violent divine sense sweeping over and suddenly wrapped him up. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Yi opened his eyes again and appeared on the 11th floor, lying in front of the table. Chun Daoxian was cleaning up, but Lin Yi could see that there was something strange about his expression. After a long time, Chun Daoxian said in a hoarse voice, "Little guy, why is your divine sense gone? Why is it so weak? Could it be that you're also cultivating the 3,000 heavenly Tao remnant?" "Not really." Lin Yi shook his head with a wry smile and immediately explained the reason. "Humph." After hearing this, Chun Daoxian snorted coldly. "Why did you save him? You even exploded your divine sense. Sigh, it's not easy to solve this." Ahem. Coughing awkwardly, Lin Yi knew that the feud between Chun Daoxian and Flawless White was not something he could touch. He immediately smiled and changed the topic. "Elder, do you know of any way to quickly restore the divine sense?" "Yes," Chun Daoxian said in a deep voice. "If you can get the heart of soul, you can completely restore your soul and divine sense in one night." "Heart of soul? What's that?" Frowning slightly, Lin Yi asked curiously. "The heart of soul, one of the legendary items of heaven and earth." Chun Daoxian sighed and said, "According to legend, anyone who has the heart of soul will have a terrifying soul power. Restoring the divine sense is simply a piece of cake." However, for tens of thousands of years, no one has ever gotten the heart of soul. You haven't gotten it and you're still talking about it? Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but roll his eyes. "You said you want the fastest way." Chun Daoxian shook his head and said, "Ordinary people who self-destruct their divine sense or use similar methods are basically crippled. They can't even cultivate again. It's already amazing that you can recover so much divine sense in such a short time. Oh right, your divine sense seems to be a little different from before. Why do I feel that it's a little different from the 3,000 heavenly Tao?" Chun Daoxian raised his head. Although he was blind, he could feel Chun Daoxuan's gaze. Lin Ye's heart tensed up and his expression turned serious. He did not expect Chun Daoxian to detect the abnormality in his divine sense. It had to be said that Chun Daoxuan's senses were too strong. Lin Ye's divine sense had only recovered a little, but Chun Daoxian could sense it just by sensing it. It was really shocking. "Ahem, maybe it's because of the self-destruction of my divine sense." Lin Yi blinked and quickly changed the topic. "Elder, is there any sacred medicine that can restore divine sense?" Chapter 638. Gulp. The sound of swallowing saliva could be heard. Lin Ye's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he was extremely flustered. Follow? Dream? Leahy did not expect Chun Daoxuan's sensing ability to be so powerful. Few, the sacred elixirs to recover soul power are all in the 9th floor's northeast area, the 3rd to the 5th row. However, the price is also quite expensive. You have to be mentally prepared. Chun Daoxian said indifferently, "Go, recover your divine sense as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be hidden dangers." "Then, Elder, I will take my leave first." Lin Yi clasped his fists and did not dare to stay any longer. He quickly left the 11th floor. After Lin Yi left, Chun Daoxuan's expression gradually changed. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, and he whispered, "This little guy seems to have merged the elephant divine skill and the 3,000 heavenly ways together. What an interesting little guy to be able to do this. Could it be that after self-destructing his divine sense, all the divine sense cultivation techniques that he has practiced can be merged together? If it's really possible, maybe I can merge the elephant divine skill and the 3,000 heavenly ways together. Phew, maybe I can even recover to my previous level. With this thought, the entire 11th floor was filled with divine sense fluctuations. It was like a hurricane, roaring and rolling wildly. Lin Yi did not know that the divine sense that had merged several cultivation techniques in his body had allowed Chun Daoxian to think of a crazy method. After returning to the 10th floor, Lin Ye's body went soft and he sat directly on the ground, panting heavily. The 11th floor was completely hidden in the void. It could be said that it was formed by divine sense. Lin Ye's divine sense was not strong enough. If he entered rashly, he would naturally be suppressed. Panting heavily, Lin Yi continued to recover his strength. 1. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the space in front of Lin Yi, and a figure slowly stepped out from it. Looking up, Lin Yi let out a long sigh of relief. The person who came was Flawless White. Looking at Lin Ye's panting appearance, Flawless White sighed and said, "You really came to find him. Actually, it's useless for you to look for him. Normal people can only wait for death when their spiritual sense self-destruct. The fact that you were able to recover is already beyond my imagination. The method that Chun Daoxian gave you should be to use the sacred medicine to slowly cultivate back." As he spoke, Flawless White glanced at the stairs in the void, his eyes filled with disdain. "Not bad." Lin Yi grinned and said, "As for the other method he mentioned, it's useless." "There are other methods?" Flawless White stared blankly for a moment before smiling. "Don't tell me he wants you to look for the Heart of Souls. That guy is really crazy about the Heart of Souls." "Oh." Hearing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but become curious. He looked at Flawless White in confusion. From the looks of it, Chun Daoxian was in desperate need of a soul heart. "Forget it. These things aren't for you to know now." Flawless White shook his head and said in a low voice, "The herbs and treasures to recover the soul and spiritual sense are all in the northeast area of the 9th floor. Here are 2,000,000 points. You can exchange them for some sacred medicine. By the way, you still have the right to exchange items for less than 10,000,000 points. If you want to use it this time, I can recommend you to exchange it for something that can recover your spiritual power faster." "Oh? What is it?" Hearing this, Lin Ye's eyes lit up as he stared at Flawless White. From the looks of it, Elder Bai was more reliable. But Flawless White grinned and said, "That thing can only be used after you recover your spiritual sense to level 40. I have to recover to level 40 first?" The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched. He couldn't wait to bite Flawless White to death. If he had a way to recover so quickly, why would he need sacred medicine? "Ahem." Flawless White coughed awkwardly and said in a low voice, "Yes, although the conditions for using it are a little weird, it can allow you to recover from level 40 to around level 55. That means that with that treasure, as long as you recover to level 40, you can recover all your strength in an instant." "What is it?" Hearing this, Lin Ye's breathing quickened. Although the conditions for using the treasure were a little weird and useless to him, he was pleasantly surprised that he could recover to level 55 directly. In that case, he only needed to recover to level 40. "Moon Drip," Flawless White said in a low voice, "that is a peerless sacred treasure. Not only does it have the ability to recover the soul and spiritual sense, but it also has a certain chance of receiving the Moon God's blessing." "The Moon God's blessing?" Lin Yi blinked and asked curiously, "What is that?" "Anyone who receives the Moon God's blessing will cultivate faster at night. Moreover, when there is the moon, they will be able to exert more strength. There was once someone who received the Moon God's blessing and broke through without any warning while walking at night. There was once someone who practiced a fist technique under the moonlight and received a supreme sacred artifact. In short, The moon god's blessing is very mysterious and has many benefits. Flawless White praised, although the moon god's blessing is powerful, only 1 in 1,000 people who have used the moon drip in the past tens of thousands of years have received it. I can exchange for the moon drip? Lin Yi asked. The moon drip costs 11 million. Since you saved my life, I will wipe out the remaining 1 million for you. Flawless White shrugged and said with a smile, however, if you do that, you will owe me a favor. Okay, I will exchange. Without any hesitation, Lin Yi immediately agreed. Only when he recovered his strength would he have the right to talk about other things. Nodding slightly, Flawless White handed a storage ring to Lin Yi and chuckled, "These are some sacred herbs I collected for you. They are all used to recover the soul and divine sense. Originally, these were gifts for you. However, since you chose the moon drip, these are the favors you owe me." This, after hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi took the storage ring and said, "Thank you, Elder." Lin Ye's eyes were filled with gratitude as he looked at Bai Wuxia. Lin Yi had never thought that an elder would care so much about him. As for owing a favor, it was almost a joke. How strong was Flawless White? Even Lin Yi did not have the confidence to surpass him in a short time. Although it was a favor, it was actually taking care of Lin Yi. The moon drip will only be produced in the middle of the month. There are still 3 days until the middle of the month. Flawless White said softly, "You should work hard to recover in these few days and try to use the moon drip as soon as possible. The day after tomorrow, I will explore the ruins of a divine sense firmament saint. If I am lucky, I might be able to recover my divine sense to rank 40 in a few days." Lin Yi grinned and said, "Elder, I will leave the moon drip to you. You think too much. It's not that easy to recover the power of divine sense." Flawless White chuckled, "Since you are going to explore the ruins, why don't you take the herbs and scram?" Chapter 639. As Flawless White laughed and scolded him, Lin Yi exited the 10th floor and rushed to the 9th floor. Xiao Sui *dream Xiao Sui *a. However, before Lin Yi could look for sacred herbs, Biluo's voice rang out. "I just took a look. The herbs Elder Bai gave you are enough for you to refine over the next few days. It's a bit of a loss to use points to exchange for sacred herbs. There were many good things in the sacred depository, but it was not worth it to exchange them for sacred herbs. Moreover, Lin Yi was going to explore the ruins in 3 days. There was no need to exchange for too many sacred herbs. That was a ruin left behind by the divine will heavenly saint. There were bound to be many treasures that could restore and strengthen one's divine sense. If Lin Yi was lucky, he might even be able to restore his divine sense to rank 40. If that happened, he could just use the moon droplet and recover most of his divine sense. Those sacred herbs would be wasted. The sacred herbs that Lin Yi needed now were different from what Biluo needed. It was better to keep the points and use them in the future. Hiss! I didn't expect Elder Bai to be so generous. Lin Yi shrugged. Looks like I got those points for nothing. Not at all, Biluo said in a low voice. The ruins of the divine will heavenly saint are definitely not as simple as you think. It's best to exchange these points for some divine will treasures. Your divine will is already weak. If you have a divine will treasure with you, it'll be safer. If you only have the divine will fan, it'll be difficult to protect you. If that's the case, I'll go take a look at the divine will treasures. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi did not reject Biluo's suggestion. He turned around and returned to the 10th floor, heading to the area where the divine will treasures were placed. The divine will fan needed to reach rank 50 before it could unleash its power. Even if Lin Yi could forcibly use it after fusing with the divine will fan, he would need to recover to rank 30 before he could unleash its power. Therefore, if he could obtain more treasures of the divine will, Lin Ye's improvement would be even greater. Arriving at the 10th floor, Lin Yi searched for a long time, but he did not find any supreme treasures of the divine will. Only supreme sacred artifacts were placed there. Even the area marked with divine will was filled with supreme sacred artifacts, but they could resist the power of divine will. Realizing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel depressed. What he needed was a supreme treasure of divine will, not a supreme sacred artifact that could withstand the power of divine will. After searching for a long time, Lin Yi was still unable to find any trace of the treasure of divine will. Surprised, he rolled his eyes and had no choice but to go downstairs and rush to the area where the elders of the first floor were. The Saint Depository Pavilion was extremely vast and contained many divine objects. Naturally, there were elders guarding it. When Lin Yi found the elders, they were first shocked and then shouted, "Little guy, it's you again. You didn't cause any trouble, did you?" In an instant, Lin Yi couldn't help but blush with embarrassment. During this period of time, Lin Yi could cause trouble wherever he went. He had become a celebrity among the elders. Therefore, the elders were afraid when they saw Lin Yi. They were afraid that Lin Yi would cause the Saint Depository Pavilion to collapse again. If that happened, the entire Cebu Gakuen would collapse. All the secret areas would be gone, and even the Saint Depository Pavilion would be gone. How would the other students improve their strength? Elders, I just wanted to ask why I didn't find any supreme treasures of the divine will in the Saint Depository Pavilion. Lin Yi asked curiously. Supreme treasures of the divine will? Hearing this, the elders relaxed and smiled. There aren't many divine will saints in the outer yard, so there are no supreme treasures of the divine will in the Saint Depository Pavilion. Only the Saint Depository Pavilion in the inner yard has supreme treasures of the divine will. I see. Lin Yi frowned and felt depressed. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to rely on the supreme treasures of the divine will to protect himself. Forget it, I can only use a supreme sacred weapon that can defend against divine will. With a sigh, Lin Yi had no choice but to return to the 10th floor and begin to choose a supreme sacred weapon. If he didn't bring anything, it would be difficult for Lin Yi to defend against the traps in the divine will heavenly saint relic with his current divine will power. After a long time, Lin Yi finally chose two supreme sacred weapons. One was the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant, a middle-grade supreme sacred weapon. It could be stored in the Jade Pendant to nourish one's soul power. Moreover, the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant could defend against most divine will power. The other was the Sky-Devouring Mirror, an upper-grade supreme sacred weapon. It could devour all forms of attacks, including divine will power and soul power. A supreme sacred weapon was much more precious than a 10,000 inscription sacred weapon. In addition, these two were special sacred weapons, so their points were very expensive. They cost Lin Yi 3 million points. If it were holy stones, he wouldn't be able to get them without tens of millions. Fortunately, Lin Yi had borrowed the points from the Sky Rapier sect. Otherwise, it would be dangerous to buy these two supreme sacred weapons. After exchanging for the supreme sacred weapons, it was already late. Lin Yi didn't dare to delay any longer and hurried back. Directly entering the ninefold space, Lin Yi didn't hesitate and began to recognize the two supreme sacred weapons as their masters. It was very difficult to recognize a supreme sacred weapon as its master. Even though Lin Yi had a lot of experience, it still took him 3 months and a lot of pain to merge the two supreme sacred weapons. Immediately after, Lin Yi began to absorb and refine the sacred medicine to restore his divine will power and soul power. At this time, Lin Yi didn't run the divine creation. Instead, he recultivated the 3,000 heavenly ways. In an instant, Lin Yi seemed to have entered a meditative state. He felt all the power and was extremely calm. His divine telekinesis grew rapidly under the stimulation of the sacred elixir. 1 month, 2 months, 5 months. In the blink of an eye, 10 months had passed. The sacred medicine in the storage ring hadn't been completely refined, but the time was almost up. Lin Ye's divine willpower had recovered to level 33. Although it wasn't strong enough, he could use the heaven will fan. I didn't expect you to recover so quickly. Biluo sighed and said, It feels good to have someone take care of you. The sacred medicine that the elder gave you is very valuable. I didn't expect Elder Bai to be so enthusiastic. Lin Yi shrugged and said in a low voice, To be precise, I didn't expect Cebu Gakuen to be like this. It's no wonder that Cebu Gakuen has always been the #1 force in the Tianlan True Domain. Just this unity is enough to make the other forces submit. Their strength is even more frightening. Biluo said in a low voice, In the remaining time, you can study the Heavenly Soul Jade Pendant and the Heaven-Devouring Mirror. These are both supreme sacred weapons. You can activate them without using your divine willpower. They are your trump cards. Lin Yi nodded slightly and didn't slack off. He put away the sacred medicine and took out the supreme sacred weapon again to study it seriously. The divine will heavenly saint relic was full of danger. The slightest mistake could put his life in danger. Lin Yi naturally wouldn't take his life lightly. Chapter 640. Lin Yi, your aura. Looking at the high-spirited Lin Yi, Qin Yu's face was full of surprise. Little talk following a dream, she could not believe that in just 2 days, Lin Yi, who was so weak that she could not even sense his divine will, had recovered to such a level. Haha, the speed of recovery is a little slow. Lin Yi laughed softly. This time, I'm afraid I'll have to rely on the few of you to pass through this ruin. The corner of Qin Yu's mouth twitched. She stared at Lin Yi for a moment, then suddenly turned and walked in the direction of the heavenly thunder realm. She swallowed the word freak and did not say it out loud. For those with talent, it might be easier to cultivate the power of divine sense, but once it was damaged, it would be difficult for them to recover. Many people needed several years to recover, but Lin Yi recovered from having no divine will to more than 30 levels in just 3 days. This speed was beyond Qin Yu's imagination. Looking at Qin Yu's back, Lin Yi shook his head and quickly followed. A moment later, Lin Yi and Qin Yu arrived at the side of the heavenly thunder realm and waited silently. Although the inner and outer courtyards were not connected, there were passages connecting the inner and outer courtyards for the convenience of accepting missions and for some special circumstances. Coincidentally, it was around the heavenly thunder realm. After waiting for a while, before Lin Yi could say anything, the passage at the side had already released a dazzling and bright light. 6 figures appeared, each of them surging with saint power. This surprised Lin Yi. The weakest of the 6 was a pinnacle saint, and their divine sense power was surging. It was extraordinary. According to Lin Yi's judgment, their divine will was at least 5th level. With the power of a 5th-grade divine will and the power of a peak saint, he could even put up a fight against a great saint. While Lin Yi was sizing up the 6 people, they were also sizing up Lin Yi. When they realized that Lin Yi was only at the middle stage of the saint realm and his divine sense was extremely weak, they couldn't help but frown. Senior Brother Feng, Senior Brother Yu, you're early. Qin Yu greeted those people with a calm expression, without any restraint. Qin Yue, is this the friend you mentioned? Feng Toya glanced at Lin Yi and said indifferently, It seems that he doesn't match the realm you mentioned. This time, we agreed to find a divine will saint to decipher the ruins. With his little divine will power, he doesn't seem to be a divine will saint. The other person yawned and said disdainfully, This kid doesn't seem to be qualified to go to the ruins. Could he be related to you? Lin Yi self-destructed his divine will power when he was carrying out a mission some time ago. That's why he became like this. Qin Yu said indifferently, I won't casually pull people in. Even I admit that I'm not as good as him in terms of divine will control. It will definitely be helpful to bring him along. Qin Yue, this ruin doesn't belong to you alone. Instantly, someone's voice gradually turned cold. Obviously, after sensing Lin Yi's strength, they didn't want to bring Lin Yi along. No need to say any more. Feng Toyo shook his head and said, We can bring him along, but we have enough people now. It's best not to bring the person he pulled along. Hearing that, Lin Ye's face instantly darkened. If they had rejected at the beginning, it would be fine. But they had already agreed. Only now did they say to kick Shen Qingyun out. Wasn't that not giving him face? Not only Lin Yi, but Qin Yu's face was also as gloomy as water. It was especially terrifying. The person Lin Yi recommended is in the invincible saint realm. He has the ability to kill a mid-stage great sage. We definitely need him. Qin Yu said in a deep voice, although it's the divine will heavenly saint relic, the mechanisms might not be related to divine will. If we bring that person along, even if something happens, we'll be able to deal with it. Okay, but if we bring that person along, then he can't go. Feng Toyoi shrugged and looked at Lin Yi with disdain and some anger in his eyes. Noticing this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown slightly. He had never come into contact with Feng Toyoi. Why would Feng Toyoi be angry with him? Ha, are you deliberately looking for trouble? Qin Yu sneered. You didn't say it earlier and waited until today. What do you mean? Nothing. Feng Toyoi said indifferently. There aren't many good things in the heavenly saint relic. There are only 7 of us. If you rashly bring one person, we can still accept it. But if you want to bring another person in to share the treasures with us, we naturally won't be happy. That's right. As soon as he said that, the others sneered. That relic was discovered by the 7 of us. Why do we have to share it? Qin Yu, bringing others will only hinder us. Enough. Qin Yu shouted and took a deep breath. She said in a deep voice, only one person can go? 8 people is the bottom line that we can accept. Feng Toyoi spread out his hands. Lin Yi suddenly said, Qin Yu, aren't you afraid of being hit by a stick when exploring with such an untrustworthy person? Of course I'm afraid. Qin Yu sneered. Feng Toyoi and the others looked at Lin Yi with cold eyes. Kid, as an outer court freshman, how can you talk to your senior brother like this? Hurry up and apologize and get lost. The relic of a heavenly saint expert isn't something that an ant like you can explore. As they spoke, 3 figures stepped forward and surrounded Lin Yi. This is, raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi looked at them indifferently. You want to fight? Not fight, but teach junior brother a lesson, they sneered. At the same time, let junior brother understand how to talk to your senior brother. As they spoke, the saint energy in their bodies rumbled and surged like waves of saint aura, falling on Lin Yi. Feng Toyoi and the others sneered and did not stop them. On the contrary, they secretly sealed Qin Yu, not allowing her to move. In an instant, Qin Yu's face was extremely gloomy. No matter what, she was the one who called Lin Yi here. Feng Toyoi and the others' actions made her furious. Rumble! Suddenly, a loud and clear sound rang out, and a sharp saber chi flew out, shattering the holy aura in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and rolled his eyes. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face. The power in his body calmed down again. Who's there? Feng Toyoi and the others were shocked and immediately took a few steps back. They shouted and kept looking around. Buzz! A fluctuation bloomed and the passage opened again. A graceful figure quietly appeared. At the same time, a cold voice blew into the ears of Feng Toyoi and the others like a cold wind. TSK, little lunatic, you guys are really powerful. You even dare to bully my people? Today's 50 chapters are over. Everyone, vote and tip. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 641. Who's there? You're courting death. How dare you call me that? Hearing that, Feng Tiany's mouth twitched and he was furious. He turned around and looked at the passage coldly. The rest of them sneered and were ready to attack. However, when the light in the passage dissipated and the figure was revealed, Feng Tiany and the rest had strange expressions on their faces. Their mouths twitched and their eyelids twitched. They did not even dare to speak. Seeing this scene, Qing Yu couldn't help but raise her brows slightly and size up that person. She was a charming young girl with a graceful figure and a beautiful face that could move one's soul. Especially when she smiled, there was a boundless charm to her. Qing Yue was surprised. She did not understand why Feng Tianyi and the rest were so shocked and frightened when they saw such a pretty girl. Qing Yu's eyes moved. When she saw Lin Yi revealing a smile, her heart skipped a beat. When she sized up the young lady again, her gaze had already changed. TSK, little lunatic. You're so arrogant. It's fine if you don't take my people seriously, but you dare to reject me when we're going to explore the ruins? The corners of Shin Qingyun's mouth curled up. She walked to Toyota E and the others and revealed a bright smile. Although her smile was bright, Feng Tianyi and the rest were trembling with fear. They turned around and saw that Lin Yi was also smiling. They could not help but feel depressed. Damn it, if you know the demoness, you should have said so earlier. If they had known earlier, they would not have treated Lin Yi like this even if they were beaten to death. Shin Qingyun might be well behaved in front of Lin Yi, but most of the time, no one could control her. What? Shin Qingyun narrowed her eyes and said, "Now that I'm here, are you still going to chase me away?" We wouldn't dare. We wouldn't dare. After coughing a few times, Feng Tianyi and the rest quickly waved their hands and shouted, "If Senior Sister Shen is willing, why would we chase you away? Hee, Senior Sister Shen, you're very powerful. We're happy to have you here. Why would we reject you? At least you know what's good for you." Shin Qingyun's face turned serious when she heard this, and she shouted in a low voice, "Those ruins were left behind by the Academy for us to temper ourselves. It wasn't for all of you to fight for treasures there." The expressions of Toyota E and the others changed slightly. "However, since you're the ones who found the ruins, I won't snatch it from you. If there are any interesting treasures in the ruins, I will take one. If you don't, I won't take a single one." Shin Qingyun tilted her head slightly and looked at Toyota E and the others. After all, the relics were found by those people. Shin Qingyun's goal was Lin Yi. She would not touch those treasures. Sure enough, when they heard Shin Qingyun's words, Feng Toyoi and the others suddenly showed ecstasy, but they soon showed a conflicted look and said, "Senior Sister Shen, this is not appropriate, right?" "That's right. With Senior Apprentice Sister Shen, our trip to the ruins this time definitely won't be dangerous. If you don't take anything, we won't be able to live with ourselves. Yes, Senior Apprentice Sister Shen, you'd better take it. We don't care about those treasures." The next moment, Toyota E and the others looked quite heroic and generous. "Forget it. But if I don't take it, it doesn't mean that my people won't take it." Shin Qingyun raised her eyebrows and ignored Toyota E and the others. She walked to Lin Ye's side and said indifferently, "If you target him again, I'll wring your heads off." "Ahem. We wouldn't dare." Hearing this, Toyota E and the others' expressions changed slightly and they quickly replied. At the same time, they looked at Lin Yi, their eyes full of doubts. They couldn't believe that the little witch, who had always been lawless, was protecting a male student today. At this time, even if Lin Ye's strength was not in their eyes, they were still full of admiration for Lin Yi. No matter what his strength was, to have the guts to be with the little witch, in their eyes, was already a great courage. "Junior Apprentice Brother Lin, how are you going to thank me this time?" Seeing this scene, Shin Qingyun smiled and stared at Lin Yi. "Then how do you want me to thank you?" Lin Yi waved his hand and said helplessly, "I don't have any points, but I want a person." Bah! Hearing this, Shin Qingyun blushed slightly and said softly, "You're worthless." "Humph, then you owe me a favor." Lin Yi shook his head helplessly, but he was quite surprised. At first, it was only Peng Tianyu and the others who said how powerful Shin Qingyun was. He didn't have a clear understanding. This time, he saw with his own eyes that several powerful divine sense saints were so afraid of her. Only then did he realize how powerful Shin Qingyun was. Not far away, Toyota E and the others were shocked when they heard the conversation between Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun. They couldn't believe that someone dared to flirt with Shin Qingyun. What surprised them even more was that Shin Qingyun wasn't angry. Could it be that the little witch who dominated the inner yard was really subdued by an outer yard freshman? Gulp. At this point, Toyota E and the others couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They didn't dare to disrespect Lin Yi anymore. Lin Yi and the others were not afraid, but Shin Qingyun was enough to make them retreat. When Qingyue saw this scene, her expression was quite strange. She thought that this matter would be difficult to resolve and might even be delayed. She didn't expect that everything would be resolved as soon as Shin Qingyun appeared. At this time, Toyota E and the others didn't dare to make a fuss. Even if Shin Qingyun demanded an exorbitant price, they wouldn't dare to resist. This also made Qingyue suspect Shin Qingyun's identity. If it was just her strength, she shouldn't have made Toyota E and the others so afraid. Alright, introduce yourselves. Tell me everyone's abilities and let's get familiar. Shin Qingyun suddenly said, I've been to the Heavenly Saint Relic several times. It's very dangerous. We must be united. Otherwise, there will definitely be danger. Hearing this, Toyota E and the others looked at each other and began to introduce themselves, including their own abilities. Shin Qingyun was powerful and had connections with many powerhouses in the inner yard. She had been to the Heavenly Saint Relic many times, so they naturally chose to believe her. This was their first time entering a Heavenly Saint Relic, so they didn't dare to be negligent. After a while, Toyota E and the others finished their introductions. After Lin Yi and Qingyue took down all the information, they also began to introduce themselves. After everyone was done, Lin Yi and the others turned their attention to Shin Qingyun. Alright, the introductions are over. Let's go. Shin Qingyun smiled and looked at Lin Yi. She laughed softly and said, Your divine sense hasn't recovered yet. Do you need me to protect you? Ha! Amidst the laughter, Shin Qingyun's figure flashed and flew out immediately. Little madman, quickly lead the way. End of chapter. Chapter 642. The Saint's spiritual mountains were covered in endless greenery, like a sea of trees. Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and the rest were led by Toyota E as they wandered in the sea of trees, looking for the entrance to the ruins. After wandering for a while, Toyota E stopped in front of a dense patch of fir trees. We're here. Toyota E looked around and let out a long sigh of relief. He immediately landed and floated in front of the fir trees. Is this the ruins? Frowning slightly, Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and Qingyue had never seen the ruins before and were surprised. Looking around, their faces became more and more ugly. Behind them was a cliff. Looking down, they could only see a vast expanse of white fog. As for the fir trees in front, they were extremely dense, as if they were solid. Looking at each other, Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and the rest could not help but be suspicious. How could the ruins be in such a place? Could it be that the ruins of the spiritual sense saint were different from the ruins of ordinary heavenly saints? That's right. Toyota E grinned and said, The entrance to the ruins will only appear at noon every day. Everyone must be careful. The entrance can only be maintained for 5 breaths of time. If you miss it, you can only wait until the next day to open it again. Hearing this, Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and the rest were still a little hesitant, but seeing Toyota Yi's solemn vow, they could only choose to wait. Time passed bit by bit. Soon, the sun rose, and the blazing light gathered and condensed into a ray of light. It happened to shine on the dense fir trees at a straight angle. In an instant, the fir trees reflected the light, colorful and spreading in all directions. At the same time, the light mixed with the scorching sun fell below the cliff. It's coming! Seeing this scene, Toyota Yi's face turned solemn, and his breathing quickened. Buzz! Buzz! An invisible force bloomed and slowly spread out. Sensing this, Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and the rest looked around and suddenly realized that the white fog below the cliff was emitting a colorful light and was rushing up at an extremely fast speed. buzz. Amidst their astonishment, the mist that filled the sky flickered with a 7-colored light and enveloped Lin Ye's group. It contained a special kind of power. Noticing this, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's expressions changed slightly. They quickly got up, but Toyota Yi's voice rang in their ears. "Don't move. The power in the fog can allow us to enter the ruins safely." Hearing this, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun frowned slightly. They hesitated for a moment and chose to believe in Toyota Yi. However, their bodies were still filled with vigilance. As long as something happened, the two of them would leave immediately. Buzz, buzz. As the 7-colored fog spread out, Lin Yi suddenly felt that there was a special will in his body. It's actually a divine will imprint. Biluo's voice suddenly sounded. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and quickly asked, "What's the use of the spiritual force imprint? Is there any danger?" "There's no danger," Biluo said in a deep voice. "The spiritual force imprint is just a mark. However, generally speaking, those who were able to understand this were definitely powerhouses. Phew, now I'm looking forward to this trip to the ruins. Perhaps you can gain a lot of benefits. I only hope that there's a treasure that can restore my divine will power." After knowing that the spiritual force imprint was not dangerous, Lin Yi was completely relieved. His eyes were fixed on the fir tree in front of him. In his line of sight, the 7-colored fog was getting thicker and thicker. It had already shrouded their bodies. They could not see their surroundings at all. They could only sense the aura of the others. "This fog is quite strange." Shen Qingyun's voice sounded. "I seem to feel that something is flowing in my body." "That's right." Toyota Yi smiled and said, "Senior Sister Shen is really amazing. You could tell at the first time." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but curl his lip. He did not expect these guys to be so good at licking his boot. They were quite arrogant before, but now they were as obedient as puppies. At this moment, the 7-colored fog wrapped around the fir trees in the sky. They blended with each other and gradually bloomed into a silver-white brilliance. Suddenly, the silver-white brilliance shone. All the 7-colored light faded and turned into silver light. They gathered together and formed a light door. The holy aura rippled and shocked everyone's mind. "This is the time. Hurry up and rush in." After all, Toyota Yi had seen it several times. He was the first to react. He exclaimed and immediately jumped up. Like a flexible fish, he rushed directly into the light door. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were suddenly awakened. They flew up and rushed toward the light door. Almost at the moment when the last figure rushed in, the light door dissipated. The sky was filled with holy light. The 7-colored brilliance and the silver-white brilliance dissipated, leaving only the endless dense fir trees. Lin Yi only felt his whole body go numb, and he fainted. When he woke up again, there was no one beside him. Hiss! Damn it, where are the others? Lin Yi got up and shook his head violently. He looked around and was shocked. He couldn't help but gasp. At this very moment, Lin Yi was actually situated in a sacred medicinal garden. The rich medicinal fragrance rushed to his face, making Lin Yi excited. After looking carefully, Lin Yi was even more ecstatic. He didn't even think about Shen Qingyun, Qin Yu, and the others. He rushed to the sacred herbs and looked carefully. This is the soul-raising herb. It can increase one's soul power. This is azure sky. It can recover one's soul power. Oh my God, this is the soul-guiding ginseng, and it's more than 1,000 years old. With these sacred herbs, I'm afraid it won't take half a month for my soul power to recover to its peak. I can even go one step further. Looking around, Lin Yi was ecstatic and couldn't help but laugh. In this sacred medicinal garden, there were all kinds of herbs that could recover one's soul and soul power. They were all quite old and had powerful effect. With these herbs, Lin Yi didn't need any treasures. He could recover his soul and soul power in a short time. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Lin Yi quickly dug out the sacred herbs and put them into the 9 layers space. However, just as he put them in, Lin Yi frowned and suddenly stopped. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. That's not right. If I really found so many sacred herbs, why didn't Biluo say anything? Looking around, Lin Ye's heart trembled. He immediately called for Biluo. However, there was no response. This is an illusion. End of chapter. Chapter 643. Hiss. I didn't expect that this damned ruin would be an illusion. After realizing that this was an illusion, Lin Yi rubbed his nose and stopped walking around. Instead, he sat down and looked around. Since it was an illusion, there must be a way to break it. As he looked around, Lin Yi could not help but complain about Feng Tianyi. That guy had been to the ruins several times, but he did not remind them that there was an illusion at the beginning. Forget about the illusion. Feng Tianyi and the others might not realize that it was an illusion, but why did he not even remind them that they would be separated? Hiss. After complaining for a while, Lin Ye's expression changed, but another idea came to his mind. Could it be that there were more of them this time, which was why there were changes in the ruins? It seems that the most important thing now is to break the illusion. Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi got up and glanced at the herb garden for a moment. Suddenly, violent saint power surged in his body. Sky-destroying finger. Celestial Emperor fist. Sky-freezing aurora. In an instant, saint power surged. The shadow of a golden index finger and the biting wind of the fist, mixed with a sharp aura, suddenly filled the entire space of the herb garden. Boom, boom, boom. The wind whistled, and the violent power swept out. In just an instant, the herb garden shattered, and countless sacred herbs scattered in all directions, turning into dust and drifting in the air. With a soft shout, Lin Yi continued to attack, and the boundless herb garden continued to collapse. In just 10 minutes, all the herb gardens within sight of Lin Ye's naked eye were destroyed and completely collapsed. However, the illusion did not disappear, and the ground was full of broken sacred herb dust. Hiss! The herb garden has collapsed, but the illusion still exists? Rubbing his nose, Lin Yi calmed down and thought carefully. Could it be that the illusion did not rely on the herb garden, nor the sacred herbs? Looking up and looking around, there was nothing except the broken herb garden, and only the vast world was left. Could it be that the illusion relies on this world to exist? With a slight frown, Lin Yi leaped up again. Flames appeared in his hand, and the heavenly sword 12 styles burst out. Sharp sword chi soared into the sky and pierced toward the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The whistling sword chi swept past, but gradually disappeared from Lin Ye's sight. Floating in the air, Lin Yi looked at the distant sky and immediately calmed down. If the illusory realm was based on heaven and earth, then this heaven and earth must be illusory. Right now, the heavenly sword 12 styles didn't touch anything and only dissipated. He himself had been flying for so long and still hadn't reached the end. Obviously, the world here was the real world. Hiss, this illusion is quite powerful. Biting his lips, Lin Yi was extremely depressed. At this time, his divine sense had not recovered yet. Otherwise, if he encountered this kind of illusion, he could have easily broken it with a sweep of his divine sense. For a moment, Lin Ye's mind was filled with thoughts as he tried to think of a way to break the illusion. At the same time, Feng Tianyi and the others were also trapped in the illusion. However, in their illusions, none of them disappeared. They were actually a team, exploring together. Everyone's illusion was similar, but there were subtle differences, but it seemed very real. Even Shen Qingyun didn't notice any abnormalities. In the illusion, she led Lin Yi and the others to explore the ruins, protecting Lin Yi along the way. The broken herb garden gradually recovered. The dust in the air condensed into stalks of sacred herbs again, appearing in front of Lin Yi. Lin Yi, who was meditating, noticed this and became more certain that he was in the illusion. However, He couldn't think of any way to break the illusion. During this time, he used all the supreme sacred weapons on him, either to attack or to look for flaws, but he didn't find anything. If it weren't for the gradually recovering herb garden and sacred herbs, Lin Yi would even suspect that he was overthinking. Time flowed by and soon 2 hours had passed. The sacred herbs and herb garden were completely restored, and a strong medicinal fragrance rushed to Lin Ye's face, invading his mind. Hiss! This D***MN illusion, how can there be no sustenance? It's so real, logically speaking, there should be sustenance. Lin Yi gritted his teeth, and just as he was about to attack again, he was stunned. No. I seem to have overlooked something. His eyes turned, and a thought suddenly appeared in Lin Ye's mind. Since this world, the herb garden, and the sacred herbs weren't sustenance of the illusion, then what about the people? The reason why he felt that the illusion was real and scary was that Lin Yi saw the herb garden, the sacred herbs, and this world. However, if Lin Yi couldn't see these things, did it mean that the illusion didn't exist? Yes, the illusion itself is fake. As long as I don't believe it, it can't affect me. With this thought, Lin Ye's eyes turned, and he casually walked in a direction. Along the way, even if he stepped on sacred herbs, cracks in the ground, or uneven ground, Lin Ye's emotions did not fluctuate. He treated them as if they didn't exist, directly stepping on them. Patter! Patter! The footsteps became louder and louder. A mark in Lin Ye's body released a silver-white light and slowly floated out. Buzz! After taking just over 30 steps, the mark in Lin Ye's body erupted. In the next moment, the silver-white light was dazzling. When the light dimmed again, the herb garden and sacred herbs that filled the sky disappeared without a trace. What appeared next to Lin Yi was a pile of thick white fog. Even with Lin Ye's cultivation, he could not see what was in the white fog. He could only see a vast expanse of whiteness. You finally woke up. Biluo's voice rang out. Lin Yi immediately released a long breath. He could finally confirm that he had charged out of the illusion. Heavenly Saint ruins indeed can't be underestimated. I didn't expect that right after entering, it gave us a show of strength. Lin Yi said with some lingering fear, Biluo, can you sense the things around you? I can't. Biluo said in a deep voice, the divine sense here is too strong, too special. I can't appear for long. All of this can only rely on you. And then you pay attention. Don't get hurt. Lin Yi nodded his head slightly, sizing up the thick fog around him, and could not help but frown deeply. Buzz, buzz, buzz. An invisible wave bloomed, accompanied by the flickering of the mark. The white fog around Lin Yi immediately dissipated. Once the white fog dissipated, the scene in front of Lin Yi immediately became clear. Lifting his eyes to look, Lin Yi cried out in surprise. In front of him, there were several people lying. It was Qingyue, Feng Tianyi, and the rest. Xin Qingyun sat cross-legged on the ground, her brows tightly knitted. Her expression was grave, and her forehead was full of sweat. Could it be that she also noticed something wrong? Detecting this point, Lin Yi immediately became curious. Wonder what Xin Qingyun's illusion would be like. Swoosh! A silver-white light suddenly bloomed from Xin Qingyun's body, instantly enveloping Lin Yi. End of this chapter. Chapter 644. Swoosh. The silver-white light moved extremely fast. Before Lin Yi could react, he was already enveloped by the light. The next moment, he felt numbness all over his body, and then he appeared in a large hall. Boom, boom, boom. The violent saint energy trembled, causing the entire hall to shake violently. Lin Yi looked up and saw Xin Qingyun holding a long saber, fighting with Lin Yi, Qingyue, and the others. Surging, sharp saber qi kept emerging, cutting the space apart, and creating a series of air-piercing sounds. Bang! Bang! Saber qi flew everywhere, and every time it hit the hall, it would shake violently. Not far away, Feng Tianyi and the others were cowering in fear, as if they did not even dare to look at Shen Qingyun. Seeing this, Lin Yi felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck his heart. Immediately, an idea flashed through his mind. That's right. Everything created by this illusion is what we want to see. I want to recover my soul energy and divine thought power, and what appeared in front of me was the sacred medicinal garden. Unfortunately, I have Biluo and the ninefold space to protect me, so the illusion can't read my mind. It can only know what I want. Therefore, the illusion is not obvious, and I can break it. Light flashed in Lin Ye's eyes, and his breathing became more rapid. He had found a way to break the illusion. In other words, as long as I can make them understand that everyone in the illusion is fake, it will be fine. No, even if I know the principle, it will be difficult to remind them. Thinking of this, Lin Yi could not help but scratch his head, puzzled. He knew how to break the illusion, but how could he tell the others? In the illusion, people's 5 senses were sealed, and they could not hear or sense anything. Even if their heads were cut off, they would not have any reaction. Of course, as sage-level masters, if someone attacked them, their saint power would automatically protect them, and they would not be killed easily. Just as Lin Yi was thinking about how to break the illusion of others, Shen Qingyun, who was fighting with the illusion, finally confirmed that the Lin Yi in her illusion was fake. Damn it, you must be a fake. Where did junior brother Lin go? Holding the long saber, Shen Qingyun stared at Lin Yi, and then turned her gaze to Feng Tianyi and the others. No matter how scared little Crazy and the others are of me, they would not be so cowardly. We, Cebu Gakuin's people, are not like this. All of this is fake. Understanding this, Shen Qingyun suddenly felt relieved. She shook her head with a bitter smile, turned around, put away her long saber, and looked coldly at Lin Yi and Qinyue. Not far away, Lin Yi saw this scene and was stunned. He did not expect Shen Qingyun to react so quickly. She is indeed an inner yard student, and she is indeed known as the Little Witch. Such sharp observation skills are really powerful. Lin Yi grinned, waiting for Shen Qingyun to leave the illusion. With Shen Qingyun's help, it would be much easier to break the illusion for the others. Buzz buzz buzz. However, after Shen Qingyun put away her long saber, the illusion did not end. Lin Yi and Qinyue looked at each other and smiled ferociously. Then, they exploded with violent strength and attacked Shen Qingyun. Heavenly Emperor Fist. Sky-destroying finger. Lin Yi formed a fist with one hand and extended the index finger of the other. An attack full of destructive power suddenly fell. Shen Qingyun had never seen Qinyue's attack before, so she did not use a fixed move. It was just a surging divine thought attack that was like a huge mountain, pressing down on Shen Qingyun. Hiss! This attack looks terrifying. Lin Yi touched his nose and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. It had to be said that the illusion was extremely powerful. The attacks of the Heavenly Emperor Fist and Sky-Destroying Finger were very similar. It was just that the core power was different. However, it was extremely lifelike. Even Lin Yi was shocked when he felt the attack. Thoughts of resistance surged in his mind. However, in the face of such a surging attack, Shen Qingyun was extremely calm. Her expression did not change at all. She looked at the attack as if she was looking at nothingness. Rumble! The violent saint power fell. Just as it was about to fall on Shen Qingyun, a silver-white light flashed. All the power and all the figures quietly dissipated like snow under the scorching sun. Lin Yi only felt dizzy. When he opened his eyes again, he looked down and saw that Shen Qingyun, who was originally sitting cross-legged on the ground, was slowly opening her eyes. Shen Qingyun woke up and shook her head violently. She looked at Lin Yi and asked in confusion, "Junior brother Lin?" "Hee, senior sister Shen, you're amazing. You came out of the illusion so quickly," Lin Yi said with a grin. Hearing the word illusion, Shen Qingyun carefully looked at Lin Yi again. After confirming his aura, she suddenly let out a sigh of relief. I didn't expect this relic to be so abnormal. It was an illusion as soon as I entered, and it was so realistic. Fortunately, I reacted in the end. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if I fell into it again. The illusion was different from other mechanisms. Its danger would increase as time passed. In the end, if people were unable to realize that it was an illusion, they would be trapped in the illusion, unable to escape for the rest of their lives. As she spoke, another mark appeared in Shen Qingyun's body. It shone with a silver-white light and dispersed the surrounding white fog. In a split second, the surrounding environment suddenly opened up. So this is how the mark is used. Shen Qingyun looked around, then raised her head to look at the mark. She suddenly understood. Lin Yi glanced at Shen Qingyun's mark, but found that the light emitted by her mark was not as bright as his. This surprised him. Shen Qingyun's realm was higher than Lin Yi's, so Shen Qingyun's mark should be stronger. Senior Sister Shen, what should we do next? Lin Yi touched his nose and asked. They are still in the illusion. If we wait any longer, there may be problems. We have to think of a way quickly. Shen Qingyun's brows were tightly knitted together. She bit her finger and fell into deep thought. After a while, Shen Qingyun suddenly said, That's not right, junior brother Lin. Didn't your divine sense collapse? How could you be the first to wake up? And the power contained in your mark seems to be stronger than mine? As soon as she finished speaking, Shen Qingyun's eyes lit up as she stared fixedly at Lin Yi. Me? Lin Yi blinked. His face was full of helplessness. What time is it now? You are still thinking about this? Shen Qingyun said proudly. You are so weak, but you were the first to escape from the illusion. Maybe the way you escaped can be used to save them. End of chapter. Chapter 645. You're so weak, but you're still the first to escape from the illusion. Maybe your method of escaping can be used to save them. Shen Qingyun stared at Lin Yi proudly. Indeed, according to a normal person's point of view, Shen Qingyun should be the first to break free from the illusion. However, Lin Yi was the first to break free from the illusion, which was surprising. I'm talented, the illusion can't trap me at all, Lin Yi said helplessly. My method doesn't work on them at all. You're talented? Blinking her eyes, Shen Qingyun sized up Lin Yi. She held back her laughter and said, Are you joking with me? Who says they're talented? Lin Yi waved his hand and said, If you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. My method can only work on me. It's not useful on them. Indeed, not everyone had a powerful soul body in their mind, or a strange existence like the ninefold space. As a result, the illusion couldn't read Lin Yi's mind at all, and the illusion that was revealed was naturally full of flaws. Seeing how certain Lin Yi was, Shen Qingyun frowned slightly and couldn't help but murmur, This is troublesome. Looking at their situation, it's obvious that they're all immersed in the illusion. Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi suddenly said, The strength of this illusion isn't very strong. As long as they can sense that something is wrong with the others and that it's an illusion, they can break free. Hearing this, Shen Qingyun recalled the scene when she broke free and nodded slightly. Yes, it's true. But in this case, I can still understand Qinyue falling into it. Little Crazy and the others are old partners. How can they not sense that something is wrong? An illusion is an illusion after all. The people it transforms are not three-dimensional, so it's easy to sense that something is wrong. At this point, Shen Qingyun glanced at Lin Yi. Obviously, Shen Qingyun noticed that something was wrong with Lin Yi and realized that it was an illusion. Then what should we do? Lin Yi said helplessly, We're in an illusion, and our 5 senses are sealed. It's hard to tell them. If I can enter their illusions, there might be a way. Shen Qingyun frowned and whispered. Hearing this, Lin Yi immediately coughed, but he did not dare to say that he had entered her illusion, but he knew that it was useless. This illusory realm wasn't difficult, but if he wanted to break it, he had to rely on himself. "Sigh, you guys are so stupid." Suddenly, Biluo spoke again in Lin Ye's mind. "You haven't noticed those imprints yet? When a person breaks the illusion, there will be an imprint. The way to break the illusion is in the imprint." Suddenly hearing Biluo's voice, Lin Yi was slightly surprised. He immediately summoned the imprint, condensed it in the palm of his hand, and observed it carefully. Buzz! The imprint rotated slowly, and the silver-white radiance contained in it rippled, clearing the white fog around him again. Imprint? Sensing the power contained in the imprint, Shen Qingyun's eyes turned, and she suddenly exclaimed, "You have an imprint on you, and I also have an imprint after breaking the illusion. Maybe the key to breaking the illusion lies in this imprint." "Yes." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi said in a low voice, "Senior Sister Shen, take out the imprint too. Maybe there will be a change when the two imprints are combined." "Okay." Shen Qingyun's mind moved slightly, and the imprint floated to Lin Ye's palm. Boom! Almost at the moment when the two imprints were close to each other, a strong force emerged and suddenly merged them together. Buzz, buzz, buzz! Invisible waves like a hurricane spread out and swept outward. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged, and a lot of the white fog that had been swept away earlier appeared. The fog drifted and actually formed a special diagram. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The silver-white radiance gradually flashed according to the order. A strange power burst out from the radiance, and suddenly enveloped Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun. This is, feeling the strange power, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked at each other. Just as they were about to speak, the imprint suddenly burst out a ray of light, and covered the two of them. Hua! In an instant, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun felt their bodies tremble. When they reacted again, they were already in a special space. In the space, there were countless light screens, and on each light screen, there were many figures. This is, after looking carefully, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's faces changed slightly, and they were quite surprised. Those light screens were the illusions that those who had entered the ruins in the past had experienced. Could this be the center of the illusions? Why do I feel that something is wrong? These illusions, shouldn't they be formations? Why are there central mechanisms and things like that? Could this be a mechanism? Shen Qingyun bit her lips, and her face was full of disbelief. Such illusions were not scary. Divine will heavenly saints, no matter how proficient they were in formations, could almost do that. However, if the illusions were turned into a huge mechanism that could trap countless people, it would be terrifying. No matter how strong the formation was, it had a time limit, and it needed saint power and people to control it. However, mechanisms were different. Once set up, it could last forever. Moreover, it did not need to consume saint power or human resources, which was very convenient. At this point, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's faces turned pale, and they quickly scanned the surrounding environment. However, the place where they were was surrounded by light screens, and scenes after scenes appeared. Other than that, there were only two small wheels beside them. Creak, creak. The two small wheels kept turning, making a crisp sound. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked at it, but they did not dare to move. If the small wheels were not the mechanism to control the illusions, then they would be in trouble. Let's find out where the illusions of the few of them are. Looking at each other, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun quickly searched through the light screens in the sky. After searching for an hour, they finally found the images of Qin Yu, Toyota E, and the others. In the images, each of them was still deciphering the divine will heavenly saints' ruins, and they did not find anything wrong. Fortunately, they were not in any danger for the time being. Only Liu Yobo was slightly injured in his own illusions. Letting out a long sigh, Lin Yi was just about to swipe the light screen to see Qin Yu, but he realized that when he stared at the light screen, there was a sudden feeling in his mind, as if he could control the illusions. In an instant, Lin Ye's face turned solemn, and he fell into deep thought. "Junior brother Lin," Shen Qingyun whispered, Do you feel that the light screens of Little Crazy and the others are connected to us? End of chapter. Chapter 646. We seem to be able to control those illusions. Lin Ye's eyes swiveled as he quickly scanned the screen. He wanted to see if he could control the illusions of a few of them, or the illusions of all of them. After a brief moment, Lin Ye's face grew increasingly solemn. He was shocked to discover that there were over 100 illusions that he could control within the screen. However, Lin Yi couldn't release all of them. Who knew what their identities were? The ruins were located in the divine spiritual mountain range, and ordinary people couldn't enter at all. If one wasn't a student of Shibu Gakuen, one wouldn't dare to enter without the strength of a peak great sage. Even heavenly saint powerhouses would have to be careful when entering the divine spiritual mountain range, and wouldn't dare to alarm Shibu Gakuen. This illusionary realm is terrifying. Shin Qingyun observed for a moment and also saw through the trick. She couldn't help but say in a deep voice, "In my opinion, those that can still be controlled are those that haven't died. As for those that can't be controlled, their bodies have already died, and only their consciousnesses are still living in the illusionary realm." That's right. Lin Yi nodded his head and said, "Using the illusionary realm as a mechanism is truly terrifying." 1. Suddenly, another ray of light appeared, and the imprint in the air landed between Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun, and 2 rays of white light entered their bodies. Boom! Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun felt a lot of memories enter their minds, causing them to feel an incomparable headache, and almost fell to their knees. After a moment, the memories were digested, and immersed in Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun's minds. As the pain disappeared, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. What entered their minds was knowledge regarding illusionary realms, including how to create them, and how to turn them into mechanisms. Of course, there was also a way to break them. After all, this was a ruin, and was left behind by Shibu Gakuen, so it wasn't very dangerous, and there was a way to survive. Of course, even if it was very dangerous, the people of Shibu Gakuen had the means to rescue the students. At the beginning of the illusion, whoever could break through would be able to obtain the reward left behind by the owner. "Phew, it's already so exciting," Lin Yi said with a grin. Shin Qingyun's eyes lit up. "It seems that there will be some fun in the ruins. Alright, let's save them first." With a thought, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun activated the imprint at the same time, adjusting the light screen of Feng Tianyi, Qin Yu, and the others. Bang bang bang! With a crisp sound, the curtain of light shattered. Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun looked at each other and retracted their imprint. In the next moment, the endless curtain of light dissipated and the white fog disappeared without a trace. The 2 of them returned to their original location. To be precise, they didn't change their position just now. It was just a space constructed by the rich power of divine thoughts. After retreating, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun looked around. After discovering that nothing was different from before, they let out a sigh of relief. Qin Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others on the ground woke up slowly. "Ouch, my head hurts." That's strange. Aren't we exploring the ruins? Why are we here? Ouch, my leg hurts too. Why can't I get up?" After waking up, Feng Tianyi and the others looked up and were stunned. Each of them felt pain all over their body. Qin Yu's face was solemn, and she had already guessed something. "Senior sister Shin, junior brother Lin, what's going on?" Feng Tianyi frowned and said, "How did we suddenly appear here? What's with the surrounding white fog?" Although Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun's imprints had dispelled much of the white fog, it was still thick. If they were a little further away, they would see a vast expanse of white, and they couldn't see through it. "Haven't you realized it yet?" Shin Qingyun shrugged and said helplessly, "Everything you experienced earlier was just an illusion. Now it's reality. Alright, take a rest and recover your strength." With that, Shin Qingyun waved her right hand gently. Emerald green light rippled and fell on Feng Tianyi and the others, healing their injuries. Of course, Shin Qingyun could only heal their external injuries. As for the recovery of the power of divine thoughts, they had to rely on themselves. It was an illusion just now? It can't be, right? Feng Tianyi and the others were stunned. They looked at each other and were particularly confused. Soon, Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu smiled bitterly. In the illusion, they had also been suspicious. However, the ruins in the illusion had been affecting their minds, so they couldn't be sure. In the end, they ignored it. I didn't expect that it was really an illusion. Feng Tianyi looked up at Lin Yi curiously. He didn't have any doubts that Shin Qingyun could come out of the illusion first. After all, Shin Qingyun was extremely talented. Even in the inner yard, she was ranked among the top in terms of talent. However, Lin Yi was only at the middle stage of the Saint Realm, and his power of divine thoughts had completely collapsed. How could he come out of the illusion first? Could it be that senior sister Shin saved him first? Phew, no matter what, he must be extraordinary. I can't underestimate him. Feng Tianyi stopped thinking about it. He made a gesture to the others, and they all sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing and divine thoughts. The heavenly saint relic was full of danger. They had to maintain their state at all times. Seeing Qing Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others enter the state of adjustment, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun looked at each other and were surprised. After they left the illusion, no imprint appeared. It seems that the imprint can only be obtained by those who break out of the illusion with their own strength. Shin Qingyun's eyes twinkled. She suddenly smiled and said, "I'm sure that the imprint is very important. Now that they haven't gotten it, maybe the most precious thing in the relic will be in your hands." Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and chuckled. "Didn't you get it too? Why, aren't you tempted? I don't major in the power of divine thoughts. What's the use of it?" Shin Qingyun rolled her eyes and immediately smiled brightly. "If there are sword skills, maybe I will fight for it. Then why are you still here?" After being glanced at by Shin Qingyun and seeing her flower-like smile, Lin Ye's heart suddenly jumped. He quickly calmed down and turned to look elsewhere. Every heavenly saint relic has all sorts of unimaginable mechanisms or training method. I want to train myself. Shin Qingyun suddenly said seriously, "My path is not like yours. You don't major in divine thoughts or saint power. I have always been practicing the saber." "Saber?" Raising his eyebrows, Lin Yi couldn't help but stare at Shin Qingyun, carefully sizing her up. After sizing her up, Lin Ye's face became more dignified. In his senses, the power in Shin Qingyun's body was extremely pure. Except for the sharpness of the saber, there was no other aura. End of chapter. Chapter 647. How is that possible? Lin Yi frowned slightly and stared at Shin Qingyun. Normally, everyone would comprehend several types of power to stabilize their own power. Although a single type of power was relatively pure and holy power was relatively powerful, when one's realm was high, the power would be too pure and would hurt one's body. Pure flames, without the suppression of other elements, were very likely to cause the cultivator to spontaneously combust. Pure sword intent, without other powers to protect the body, was very likely that the cultivator's internal organs would be pierced full of holes by the sharp sword aura. There were also people who tried to cultivate only one type of power, but the result was very tragic. Without exception, all of them died an unnatural death. They had not even cultivated to the saint realm and were only in the celestial realm. Their bodies could not withstand a single type of pure power. After discovering this, no one dared to cultivate only one type of power. They all focused on one type of power and used the rest to improve and protect their bodies. But now there was only endless sword intent in Shin Qingyun's body, which surprised Lin Yi. Normally, Shin Qingyun would have exploded and died when she was in the celestial realm. How could she still cultivate to the invincible saint realm? I don't know why. Shin Qingyun sighed and said, my body has been very strong since I was a child. My father met a strong person some time ago and found out that my body was abnormal. He said that I was born with a sword body and could not cultivate other skills or other powers. I could only walk the path of Theta Scarabii. At first, my father did not believe it and let me cultivate according to the normal method, but I could not attract the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. One day, I picked up a short sword by chance and embarked on the path of cultivation. From then on, there was only the sword in my world. Other than the sword, I could not comprehend any other power. There is such a constitution. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but be surprised. Normally, there would not be such a restriction on the constitution. For example, although Shi Tian had the flame imperial body, he could still absorb other elements except for flames. Otherwise, no matter how high his affinity with fire was, he would still be burned to death by the flames. Not to mention you, even the elders of Cebu Gakuen couldn't figure out anything about this kind of constitution. Shin Qingyun sighed. At first, I didn't dare to let others discover my abnormality. It was only after I came to the True Sky Billow domain and entered Cebu Gakuen that I dared to speak of it. I hope that my physique can change soon. I don't want to be a weirdo. Speaking of this, Shin Qingyun's face was filled with disappointment. Lin Yi rolled his eyes and couldn't help but sigh. He finally understood why Shin Qingyun became a witch. She was different from ordinary people. She was afraid that others would be afraid, so she could only use this kind of method to fool around and divert other people's attention. Indeed, if anyone were to find out that someone's cultivation method was different from the rest of the world, they would definitely panic in fear. In other words, you don't have the power of divine thought, nor do you have the power of other domains? Lin Yi touched his nose and said softly, then why did I sense other powers earlier? That's because I used my saber will to disguise it. Shin Qingyun shrugged and said helplessly, I once learned a technique that can use saber will to disguise other auras. In fact, I only have one type of domain, which is the pure saber domain. Now I'm stuck at that step and can't take it. However, I have a feeling that after I merge with the nameless saber, I'll definitely be able to take that step. After the domain is the law. If you can comprehend the law of saber, your sharp power will reach a new level. Lin Yi nodded slightly and suddenly asked, oh right, if you only cultivate the saber way, doesn't that mean that your saint power is filled with sharp saber will? How is your body able to withstand it? I don't know. Shin Qingyun waved her hand and said, my physique has been very strong since I was young. Those saber wills can't hurt me. Can you let me feel that saber will? After hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi still asked. Shin Qingyun's mind moved slightly, and in an instant, the air trembled violently. Sharp saber chi surged wildly, bringing with it the sound of breaking the air. It floated in the air, causing the entire space to turn illusory. Lin Yi bore the brunt of it. His skin could not withstand the violent power and cracked open, causing small amounts of blood to flow slowly. What a strong saber chi! Exclaiming, Lin Yi ignored the wounds on his body, and his expression was particularly solemn. The saber will just now was purer and sharper than that of an ordinary great sage intermediate stage expert. Even with Lin Ye's strong physique, it was shocking that it could crack open. No wonder you can defeat an intermediate great sage intermediate stage expert. Your saber will is too pure, even stronger than theirs. Lin Yi said excitedly, if your defense can keep up, you might be able to fight an intermediate great sage at the peak. No. Shin Qingyun shook her head and said, my physique can only withstand saber way attacks. No matter what realm the saber will, saber chi, or saber territory is, as long as it's related to the saber, it can't cause any harm to me. But if it's other forces, I can't resist. It's very difficult for me to fight an intermediate great sage intermediate stage expert. If it's an advanced great sage intermediate stage expert, I can't do anything unless I use a supreme sacred artifact to protect myself and kill him in a short time. So that's how it is. Touching his nose, Lin Yi was quite surprised. It was the first time he met someone with such a physique. She can ignore all saber-related forces. This physique is really too strong. After a while, Lin Yi could only shake his head and sigh in admiration, but he couldn't find anything else. Even when he asked Biluo for help, Lin Yi couldn't get an answer. In my opinion, your physique doesn't belong to this continent. After a long time, Lin Yi patted Shen Qingyun's shoulder and whispered, "But this is also good. At least you can get a strong force to protect yourself. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone about this. You don't have to worry. Whether the path of cultivation is different or not, as long as you can control that force, it's fine. You don't have to care about what others think when you're strong." Shen Qingyun blinked when she heard that. She stared at Lin Yi closely as her eyes shone brighter and brighter. "In the future, if I come across something good related to sabers, I'll definitely leave some for you." Lin Yi smiled and said, "Then this time I'll kindly accept it. It's good that you remember." Shen Qingyun tilted her head slightly and looked at Lin Yi with a strange light in her eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 648. Time passed bit by bit. After Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun finished talking about their physiques, they stood guard for Feng Tianyi and the rest. Soon, 2 hours had passed. Qin Yu and Feng Tianyi had finished their cultivation. Looking at Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun, Qin Yu and Feng Tianyi were stunned for a moment. A strange feeling arose in their hearts. Another 2 hours later, Feng Tianyi and the rest had finished their cultivation. Everyone had recovered to their peak state. They were full of energy. Therefore, everyone set off and rushed into the depths of the white mist. On the way, Shen Qingyun and the rest talked about the illusion. When the crowd found out that it was Lin Yi who had rescued them, their expressions immediately changed. They thought they were stronger than Lin Yi. They did not expect that they would be trapped as soon as they entered the ruin. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that they could get out of the illusion. As they went deeper, the white mist became thicker. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun both called out their marks to disperse the white mist. Patter! Patter! At the same time, the sound of footsteps echoed in their ears. Everyone sensed that something was wrong. Originally, they seemed to be walking on an open plain. However, as they walked, they seemed to have walked into a small alley. Even the sound of their footsteps could not be stopped. Noticing this, Lin Yi and the rest immediately slowed down and looked around. The power of divine thought rippled out and intertwined into a divine thought net to protect everyone. Moving forward slowly, Shen Qingyun took the lead with a long saber in her hand. The sharp saber chi soared to the sky and opened up a path in front. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the rest shook their heads. They were amazed by Shen Qingyun. Cough! Cough! After walking forward for a while, a soft coughing sound suddenly sounded beside the ears of Lin Yi and the others. What's that sound? Raising their eyebrows, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun and the rest raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. However, what entered his eyes was a vast expanse of whiteness. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked at each other. Then, they immediately changed their direction and rushed towards the source of the sound. The mark flickered and emitted a silver-white radiance, slowly dispersing the white fog. Cough, cough! The light coughing sound became louder and louder. Soon, a figure lying on the ground appeared in everyone's line of sight. There's someone there. Feng Toyota and the others were shocked. They didn't go over directly, but looked carefully. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun were also staring at that figure. From what they could sense, that person's life force was extremely weak, like an old man with one foot in the grave. That's not right. How could there be people in the ruins? I've been here several times, but I didn't see anyone. Feng Tian furrowed his brows and whispered, "Be careful, there's definitely something strange about this guy." Lin Yi nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "Let's go together and see what's going on." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi and the others approached the figure together. However, their speed was rather slow. As they got closer, Lin Yi and the others could see the person clearly. It was a woman. Although her figure wasn't very good, it was still curvaceous. Although her cheeks were stained with dust, they were still very pretty. Of course, compared to Shen Qingyun and Qinyue, she was still lacking. Compared to ordinary people, she was already very beautiful. Coupled with her haggard appearance, Feng Toyota and the others' hearts suddenly trembled. That's strange. Why would a woman appear in the ruins? Could it be that the people who have explored the ruins in the past are trapped here? Feng Toyota and the others frowned slightly and were surprised. Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun were also suspicious. No one knew how many people had entered the ruins. In particular, the two of them had seen countless people trapped in the illusion. They couldn't be sure if someone had broken out of the illusion and continued to explore it. If the woman broke out of the illusion and was lost in the white fog, it would be too cruel for them to leave her in the lurch. Perhaps they could get some information about the ruins from the woman. Wu, as if sensing the arrival of Lin Yi and the others, the woman raised her eyes and revealed a look of ecstasy. She opened her mouth slightly and made a sound. The hopeful look on her face became more and more obvious. She looked at Lin Yi and the others like a person who had been thirsty for a long time and saw water. Seeing this scene, Feng Toyota and the others were moved. They couldn't bear to see her like this and immediately walked towards her. "Hey, little madman, what are you doing?" Shen Qingyun exclaimed. She was about to pull Feng Toyota and the others but was stopped by Lin Yi. Frowning slightly, Shen Qingyun saw Lin Yi's dignified look and stopped pulling Feng Toyota and the others. She just stared at them with sparkling eyes. Obviously, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and Qinyue all noticed that something was wrong with the woman. The white fog was particularly suspicious. It couldn't be dispersed and could block people's senses. If it weren't for Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's mark, they would have suffocated. The woman, who knew how long she had persisted in the white fog and survived. It was unbelievable. "Miss, what's wrong with you?" Feng Toyota and the others leaned forward and quickly reached out to help the girl. However, when they helped the girl up, they were shocked to find that it wasn't her legs under her skirt, but something disgusting like blood. "Ah!" Seeing this, Feng Toyota and the others screamed and quickly retreated. However, the woman beside them had already transformed into a bloody and sticky giant beast. She opened her huge mouth and revealed her sharp teeth as she bit towards them. "You're courting death." Lin Ye's face turned cold. The blazing flame appeared in his hand and he swung it. The sharp sword chi broke through the air and slashed at the sticky mouth. Buzz. However, the sword chi didn't cause any damage to the giant beast. It went straight through and disappeared into the depths of the white fog. What's going on? Seeing this, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and Qinyue were stunned. They opened their mouths and stared at the sticky giant beast. Roar. The giant viscous beast roared. Its two dull gray eyes glanced at Lin Yi and the other two. Then, it opened its huge mouth again and tried to swallow Feng Tianyi and the others. It was as if it wanted to swallow them in one gulp. That's right, this is the relic left behind by the divine will heaven saint. Lin Yi suddenly thought of this and hurriedly shouted, "Feng Tianyi, hurry up and use your spiritual sense." Hearing Lin Yi's shout, Feng Toyota and the others came to their senses. They were divine will saints. Why should they be afraid? Feng Toyota and the others formed a seal with their hands. The moment they retreated, surging divine will power mixed with violent power rushed toward the disgusting sticky giant beast. End of chapter. Chapter 649. Boom, boom, boom. The power of divine telekinesis collided with the viscous behemoth's body and instantly exploded with a huge force, sending the viscous behemoth flying. Roar! After tumbling for a while, the viscous giant beast got up again and looked at Lin Yi and the rest ferociously. Damn it! How dare you tempt us? After Feng Tianyi realized the strength of the giant beast, he was no longer afraid. With a gloomy face, he stepped forward and chopped with his right hand. 1. The formless power of divine sense bloomed like a sharp knife, instantly cutting off the head of the viscous giant beast. Plop! The head fell to the ground. The body of the giant beast shook for a moment and exploded with a boom, turning into divine telekinesis that filled the sky. Noticing this, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the rest were surprised. Such a disgusting thing was actually condensed from divine telekinesis? Impossible! Divine telekinesis is mostly invisible. According to legend, only a few people can concretize divine telekinesis. However, their concretization is only condensed into various shapes. Feng Tianyi and the rest looked at each other in shock. Lin Yi was also shocked. He originally thought that Chen Daoxuan's ability to condense divine telekinesis into the shape of all things in the world was already terrifying. However, the owner of this ruin taught him another lesson. Condensing divine telekinesis into a person and turning it into a puddle of disgusting things so vividly. This kind of realm had already surpassed their understanding. Lin Yi suddenly had a thought. Was this ruin really left behind by a heavenly saint powerhouse? This kind of method could only be done by powerhouses who surpassed the heavenly saint realm. The giant beast collapsed. Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and Qin Yu immediately fixed their eyes on Feng Tianyi and the rest. Sensing Lin Yi and the rest's gaze, Feng Tianyi and the rest could not help but feel awkward. If they hadn't stepped forward just now, the sticky giant beast probably wouldn't have attacked them. I sensed it just now, Qin Yu suddenly said. In the beginning, it didn't have the ability to move. It was only after coming into contact with you and absorbing the power in your bodies that it transformed into other forms and was able to move. In other words, as long as we don't touch it, it won't turn into a disgusting beast. Phew, in that case, if we encounter such a situation again, we'll just avoid it. Toyota said with a wry smile, Sorry, I've caused trouble for everyone. Avoid? Why are you avoiding it? Lin Yi suddenly asked. In an instant, Shen Qingyun, Qin Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others all looked at Lin Yi in confusion. They were here to explore the ruins and obtain treasures. They could not afford to waste time. Sensing everyone's surprise, Lin Yi smiled and raised his head. He pointed to the sky and said in a low voice, Look, the divine sense aura hasn't dissipated yet. It's condensed in the air. In my opinion, this divine consciousness aura is our reward for defeating the giant beast. Hearing this, Toyota and the others frowned and suddenly said, You mean, these divine consciousness aura can be absorbed? Yes. Nodding slightly, Lin Yi took a step forward and immediately guided some of the divine consciousness aura into his body. Seeing this, Toyota, Qin Yu, and the others suddenly became very nervous and stared at Lin Yi. Only Shen Qingyun was full of confidence in Lin Yi. She knew that he would never do something that he was not confident in, so she was not worried. However, Shen Qingyun did not know that this time, Lin Yi was really going for it. Seeing the divine consciousness aura dissipating, Lin Yi subconsciously wanted to absorb it. That was why he made such a decision. Almost at the moment when the divine consciousness aura entered Lin Yi's body, his body bloomed with a silvery white light. In the next moment, a holy aura filled the air and restored Lin Yi's divine consciousness power. Feeling this, Lin Yi could not help but be overjoyed. These auras allowed him to recover a lot of soul power and divine consciousness power. The effect was not inferior to the sacred elixir. Inhaling a breath of cold air, Lin Yi opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, The effect of these divine consciousness auras is not inferior to the sacred elixir. Try and see if you can absorb it. As soon as he finished speaking, Qing Yu, Toyota E, and the others did not hesitate and immediately guided the divine consciousness aura in the air into their bodies. In the next moment, their bodies also bloomed with a bright light. Shen Qingyun looked at this scene and pouted. She looked at Lin Yi in confusion. Your soul power and divine consciousness have not recovered yet. Why don't you absorb more? We are a team after all. These things must be divided equally. Lin Yi shrugged and said with a smile, moreover, we have just entered the ruins. In my opinion, there are many good things inside. I don't have to rush at all. If I take too much now, what will I do in the future? Shen Qingyun glanced at Lin Yi, covered her mouth and laughed. You are so scheming. This is not scheming. Lin Yi coughed softly and immediately signaled Shen Qingyun to stop talking. Boom, boom, boom. A few auras burst out. Qing Yu, Toyota E, and the others were all shocked and exclaimed, hiss. The enhancement of these divine consciousness auras seems to be even stronger than the sacred elixir. That's right. Lin Yi grinned and said, that's why I said that not only can we not avoid them, but we also have to take the initiative to look for them. Phew, let's not talk about it anymore. If I can encounter 20 of these things, I think I can break through to the next level. Fang Yuanping said excitedly, the Heavenly Saint ruins are indeed powerful. There are actually such good treasures. But everyone must be careful. Lin Yi said in a deep voice, just now you must have been charmed. That's why you went forward and came into contact with them. With their power, I think other than temptation, they have other means, so everyone must not let their guard down. Also, they are not afraid of sword qi, so they probably won't be afraid of other powers. Everyone, use your divine consciousness power to attack them. Okay. Toyota E and the others agreed. Originally, they were not convinced by Lin Yi. They admired him only because he dared to be with Shen Qingyun, that witch. But now, Lin Yi was the first to discover that something was wrong with the divine consciousness auras. He also analyzed the weaknesses and abilities of those sticky giant beasts. Naturally, they would believe in Lin Yi. After making up their minds, Lin Yi and the others no longer walked in a straight line. Instead, they spread out, not wanting to miss any corner as they searched for the traces of those sticky giant beasts. Hard work pays off. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, another soft voice sounded out. When they got closer, it was indeed another woman. She wore a long dress and was lying on the ground. She looked so pitiful that it made one's heart ache. One could not help but want to help them. End of chapter. Chapter 650. In the vast white fog, Lin Yi and the rest strolled around, looking for traces of the giant sticky beasts. In this day, they encountered a total of 17 giant sticky beasts. After killing them, one of them directly broke through from level 55 to level 56. The rest of them had completely stabilized their divine senses. Lin Yi had also gained a lot, recovering his divine sense to level 34. One should know that the recovery of divine sense was far more difficult than the improvement. Lin Yi could recover so quickly, which showed the strength of the divine sense aura. Phew! It's been an hour and we still haven't found them. I guess there's nothing left? After strolling for a while, Feng Toike wiped the sweat off his forehead, feeling depressed. At this moment, he was only one step away from breaking through to level 57. However, he could no longer find those giant sticky beasts. There should be more. Lin Yi said in a low voice, the giant sticky beasts we encounter are getting stronger. I think they should have their own territory. As long as we continue to search, we'll definitely find something. In the beginning, the giant sticky beasts that Lin Yi and the rest encountered were at most level 50. Feng Toy and the rest could easily kill them. However, later on, the giant sticky beasts they encountered became stronger. Even if Feng Toy and the rest joined forces, it was still difficult to deal with them. After fighting with the giant sticky beasts many times, they also summed up the giant sticky beasts' abilities and weaknesses. Those giant sticky beasts not only had the ability to charm people, but they could also teleport and instantly change into a person's figure. In the beginning, Lin Yi and the rest did not stop, and one of them was seriously injured. Just as they had guessed, those giant beasts were not afraid of anything other than the power of divine sense. Hence, no matter how strong Shen Qingyun was, she could only be a bystander. She could only watch silently from the sidelines as Lin Yi and the others made their move. However, Lin Ye's divine sense had not recovered. In the end, it was still Feng Toyoi, Qin Yu, and the rest who were fighting. Cough cough, suddenly, another coughing sound was heard. Lin Yi and the rest were delighted. They quickly sped up and rushed in the direction of the sound. However, a moment later, when they got closer, their expressions turned grave. Not far away, there were 6 figures lying on the ground. The life auras of each of the 6 figures were much stronger than those they had encountered before. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the others couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They were quite shocked in their hearts. Looking at each other, Lin Yi and the others were stunned. Would they be able to defeat these giant sticky beasts that had gathered together? Kakik. Just as Lin Yi and the others were in a daze, a sinister laugh suddenly rang out. In a split second, a cold wind blew. Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the others suddenly felt a chill run down their backs, as if they were in an ice cellar, shivering. When he raised his head, he saw that the 6 figures had actually stood up on their own. Bright red blood flowed, turning them into bloody figures. What is this? Mutated? Seeing this scene, Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the others were shocked beyond words. Amidst the crisp sound, a pair of blood-red wings unfurled from the backs of the 6 women. Their clothes were tattered and stained with blood as they floated in the air, staring ferociously at Lin Yi and the others. Their teeth were as sharp as an animal's, incomparably sharp and gleaming with a cold light. Their 10 fingers were slender and their nails were as sharp as knives, chilling one's heart. Gulp. The sound of saliva being swallowed continuously rang out. Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the others staggered back a few steps. Why didn't they turn into giant beasts? Or are they in human form? Toyota E and the others frowned, their hearts filled with worry. Their strength must be stronger than the previous giant beasts. Lin Ye's expression was solemn. Kakik. The sinister laughter rang out again. In the next moment, the 6 blood women flapped their wings, waved their sharp fingers, and attacked Lin Yi and the others. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The wind whistled, and Lin Yi and the others hurriedly retreated. Divine telekinesis net. Toyota E and the others formed a seal with their hands, and the power of their divine telekinesis exploded, intertwining into a giant net, blocking the 6 blood women. Poof! However, the 6 blood women merely waved their claws, and the divine telekinesis net shattered and dissipated before everyone's eyes. Oh no, their strength seems to have reached level 56 divine telekinesis. Toyota Yi's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly shouted, "We must separate them. The power they can unleash when gathered together is too great." Alright. As soon as he finished speaking, Toyota E, Qin Yu, and the others immediately leaped and separated the 6 blood women. Among them, 2 were only level 55 divine telekinesis saint. They were no match for the blood women in a one-on-one fight, so they had to work together. Even so, they could only barely block the blood women and could not launch an effective counterattack. Not far away, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun looked anxious. They could only watch Toyota E and the others fight the blood women. One of them did not cultivate his divine telekinesis, while the other's divine telekinesis was shattered, so they could not attack. Phew. Looks like the situation is not good. After carefully observing for a moment, Lin Ye's expression was extremely grave. Other than Toyota E and Qin Yu, the others seemed to be no match for the blood women. Once they are defeated, the Blood Women will surround Qin Yu and Toyota E, and we will be finished. D*eminent, how can they transform into other forms? Shin Qingyun frowned slightly. Originally, they thought that they were all in the form of giant beasts. Even if they were powerful, they would not be afraid. After all, the giant beasts were too slow and had too many restrictions. It would be rather easy to destroy them. Now, however, they were feeling gloomy. Although the Blood Women were not much stronger than the giant beasts, their movements were extremely fast, and their claws were sharp. No one dared to fight them head-on. Bang, 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 bang. Divine telekinesis collided continuously. In the intense battle, Toyota E and the others were quickly injured, and they were covered in blood. Roar. After sensing the aura of fresh blood, the Blood Women became even more frenzied. The aura in their bodies was extremely overbearing. In this way, the few of them who were already at a disadvantage could no longer hold on. Bang! In the crisp sound, the few figures were immediately sent flying by the Blood Women. Their bodies were twitching non-stop. Lin Yi frowned slightly, and he was even more terrified. This ruin was too powerful. He found it hard to believe that such powerful Blood Women were condensed from divine telekinesis. Sinister laughter sounded again. After the three Blood Women finished off their opponents, they did not surround Qin Yu and Toyota E. Instead, they turned to Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun with ferocious expressions. Screech! Flapping their wings, the three Blood Women immediately waved their sharp claws and attacked Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun at lightning speed. End of chapter. Chapter 651. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Oh no! Sensing that terrifying attack, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun's expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly retreated. Swoosh! However, the two Blood Ladies were extremely fast. In just a few breaths, they were in front of Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun. Their hideous grins made Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun's hearts skip a beat. In the next moment, the sharp claws were right in front of them. Ah! Shin Qingyun screamed and grabbed Lin Yi's shoulder tightly. Lin Yi quickly took out the Tianhun jade pendant and injected his saint power into it. Buzz! In an instant, a yellow light screen appeared and blocked Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun. Bang! Bang! The sharp claws slammed against the earthy yellow light screen. Immediately, a loud sound was heard and the light screen shook violently. Roar! The Blood Ladies roared and swung their claws at the light screen. At the same time, several sharp bone spikes popped out from their bodies and stabbed the light screen. Dong! 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 In an instant, the light screen trembled violently, and fine cracks appeared on it one after another. Damn it! I can't hold them off anymore. Lin Yi frowned and took out the sky-devouring mirror again. He looked at the two Blood Ladies with cold eyes. If even the sky-devouring mirror could not deal with them, they could only fight. Shin Qingyun held Lin Yi's arm tightly. She bit her lips and took a step forward. She did not want to be a burden to others. With a thought, a long saber appeared in Shin Qingyun's hand. Her eyes were cold as she stared at the two Blood Maidens. Senior Sister Shin, don't be rash. Seeing this, Lin Yi was shocked. You can only use your divine thought to deal with them. You can't do any harm to them. Gritting his teeth, Lin Yi was about to grab Shin Qingyun when a clear voice sounded. The light screen of the Tianhun jade pendant exploded. The two Blood Ladies rushed toward Shin Qingyun. It waved its sharp claws, creating a series of afterimages. Lin Yi's expression changed. However, Shin Qingyun had already dashed out. The moment the light screen shattered. A harmless saber. As soon as his piercingly cold shout resounded, saber energy shot out horizontally and vertically, and it instantly pierced through the bodies of the blood-red women. Swoosh. SWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSWSW. SW. SWSWSWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSW. SWSWSWSW. What? SWSWSWSWSWSW. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Not to mention Lin Yi, even Shen Qingyun was stunned. What's going on? My ordinary attacks couldn't hurt them. Why can I hurt them now? Could it be that these blood ladies are different from the giant beasts? Lin Yi rolled his eyes and looked at the two people who were about to be defeated not far away. He immediately jumped up and a bright flame appeared. He raised his hand and a sharp sword chi broke through the air. Sword chi 30,000 miles. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sword territory appeared. In an instant, countless sword chi whizzed toward him and formed a huge sword. Swoosh. He brandished the huge sword and the sword chi dashed toward the remaining 4 blood ladies. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, the sword chi didn't do any harm to the blood ladies. It didn't even pierce through their bodies. It just went through their bodies as if they were illusions. What's going on? The corners of Lin Ye's mouth twitched violently. He was surprised. He withdrew his blazing flames and turned to look at Shen Qingyun. Lin Yi had already understood that it wasn't that the blood women's nature had changed. They were still immune to the rest of the spiritual force attack. However, Shen Qingyun's power was too pure. That pure saber power didn't belong to this world. Perhaps it had a special effect that could hurt the blood ladies. What's going on? Shen Qingyun frowned and was stunned. She looked at Lin Yi in a daze. Nothing. Lin Yi said in a low voice, Senior Sister Shen, since you can hurt the blood ladies, hurry up and do it. If you don't do it now, I'm afraid the others will be hurt. In the air, other than Qin Yu and Feng Tianyi who were still able to endure, the other 2 were trembling all over and their limbs were powerless. If they did not know that defeat meant death and still clenched their teeth and persisted, it was likely that they would have been defeated long ago. All right. Shen Qingyun glanced around and knew that this wasn't the time to think about other things. As long as she could hurt the blood ladies, she would do it first. Dazzling Sky Saber. After taking a deep breath, Shen Qingyun leaped up and spun the long saber in her hand. In an instant, illusions appeared one after another. Dozens of long sabers flickered with cold light and enveloped Shen Qingyun. Buzz, buzz. The sharp saber chi wreaked havoc and whistled incessantly. Feeling the violent power of the saber chi, even the few people who were in the middle of fighting were shocked. When they turned around, Feng Tianyi and the others were surprised. They looked bitter and helpless. Senior Sister Shen, why are you still doing it at this time? Sigh. Feng Tianyi and the others were depressed and despaired. They didn't see how Shen Qingyun cut the 2 blood ladies in half. Therefore, they thought that Shen Qingyun couldn't hurt the blood ladies. Under such circumstances, Shen Qingyun's move wouldn't hurt the blood ladies, but it would hinder them. However, just as they were feeling depressed, saber shadows filled the sky. Among the dozens of long sabers, countless saber chi, saber shadows, and saber bodies formed by piercing saber intent danced wildly like a fountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The wind whistled and the saber chi wreaked havoc, instantly penetrating the bodies of the 4 blood ladies. Ah! Amid the shrill screams, the 4 blood ladies were cut into pieces by the saber chi before they could react. Me. What's going on? Seeing this, Feng Tianyi, Qin Yu, and the others were stunned. They had tried before, but ordinary attacks were useless against the blood ladies and the giant beasts. Why was Shen Qingyun able to cut them into pieces as soon as she attacked? In an instant, Feng Tianyi and the others swallowed their saliva. They looked at Shen Qingyun with eyes full of shock. Senior Sister Shen, you're really too powerful. After a long time, Feng Tianyi sighed. They always knew that Shen Qingyun was powerful, but they didn't expect Shen Qingyun's saber intent to be so terrifying. She could even cut such a strange existence into two. No, no, not too far away, Lin Ye's expression was extremely heavy when he saw the 6 blood women had been shattered into two and were twitching on the ground. End of chapter. Chapter 652. Something's not right. Lin Yi shouted, "These blood ladies are not dead yet. Something's wrong." Hearing Lin Ye's words, Toyota Qinyue and the others were surprised. Junior brother Lin. Toyota frowned and said, "These blood ladies have been split in half. Why is it still not right? They're not dead yet. They haven't turned into divine consciousness aura." Lin Ye's face was solemn. His eyes were cold as he stared at the blood ladies that had been split in half. Hearing this, Toyota and the others looked at each other and said, "Could it be that they're not the same thing, so they won't turn into divine consciousness aura after death? How is that possible?" Lin Yi shook his head and said, "Don't forget, they're all seducing people in the form of young girls. In my opinion, these blood ladies are of a higher level. If they're dead, their divine consciousness aura should be stronger. Why isn't there any divine consciousness aura? So, they're definitely not dead yet." Speaking of this, Toyota and the others were shocked. Shin Qingyun also said, "Little crazy, try attacking them with your divine consciousness again." "Okay." Toyota nodded slightly. With a thought, surging divine consciousness power whizzed out like a storm and slammed violently on the blood ladies on the ground. Roar. Almost at the moment when the divine consciousness power was about to fall, the blood ladies that had been split apart on the ground let out a shrill roar. The next moment, their bodies suddenly collapsed and turned into puddles of blood. Gulp, gulp. As soon as they turned into blood, they gathered together at an extremely fast speed and turned into a huge puddle of thick blood. What? Their pupils contracted violently. Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others quickly retreated. Looking at the thick puddle of blood, they couldn't help but vomit. A fishy smell wafted out from it. What's going on? They're not dead. Toyota and the others' faces changed drastically. They frowned and stared at the thick puddle of blood. Kakik. The sinister laughter rang out once again. The blood that was so thick that it was close to flesh and blood suddenly extended 4 limbs and a head. Hiss, how disgusting! Seeing this scene, Shen Qingyun and Qinyue both turned their heads away, their throats feeling extremely uncomfortable. Even Lin Yi, Toyota and the others felt their mouths twitch and their stomachs churn. However, the lump of flesh quickly turned into a young girl. Blood flowed all over her body, and there were 3 pairs of huge blood-red wings on her back. She looked quite terrifying. The blood woman's form was exactly the same as before. However, her body was more than 10 times larger than before. The blood woman, who was originally the size of a human, was now dozens of feet tall. Her sharp teeth and ferocious smile were extremely shocking. He became a giant just like that. The corner of Lin Ye's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Roar. Miserable screams rang out. Blood Woman raised her right hand, and in an instant blood filled the sky. It whistled over and suddenly enveloped them. Oh no! Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others' expressions changed slightly, and they hurriedly flew up. Toyota and the others rushed in front of their injured brothers and pulled them up into the air. Gulp, gulp. Blood flowed. In just a dozen breaths, the blood had already reached a height of several meters, like a lake. Then, the blood boiled and smoke slowly rose one after another. There was originally endless white fog here, and with the addition of the smoke, the visibility in the air became increasingly poor. Lin Yi and the others could only vaguely see the figure of the blood woman. Fortunately, it had become bigger. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see it clearly. Phew, 6 blood women have gathered together. They're a little strong. We have to be careful. But now Toyota E and the others carried an injured person in each hand and couldn't help but feel depressed. We don't have enough people. Now we can only rely on you. In an instant, Toyota E and the others turned their attention to Lin Yi and Qin Yu. At this moment, they already understood that Shen Qingyun could indeed injure the blood women, but he couldn't directly kill them. If something went wrong, it would be over. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi looked at the sky-devouring mirror in his hand and took out the Heavenly Soul jade pendant again. Qin Yu's expression was also grave, and she was not confident. To be honest, it was already difficult for her to win against ordinary blood women. Now that she was facing such a huge blood woman, what could she do? No need. Leave this blood woman to me. Shen Qingyun bit his lip and said, I'll cut it into pieces again and leave it to you. As soon as he finished speaking, Shen Qingyun held a long saber and charged out again. Dazzling saber. As Shen Qingyun shouted coldly, countless sabers condensed around him again and shot at the blood woman continuously. At the same time, Shen Qingyun waved his long saber and slashed at the blood woman with sharp saber aura. Roar. Blood Maiden's 3 pairs of wings flapped, and in an instant, her body flew to the side like an illusion, dodging the countless blades. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the next moment, hundreds of piercingly cold blood-red sharp claws appeared and suddenly attacked Shen Qingyun. Boom! Saber chi whistled through the air. Before those blood-red claws could land, they had already been chopped into pieces. Roar! In an instant, the blood woman let out a shrill scream. Boom, boom, boom! Suddenly, the boiling blood water exploded. Dozens of blood-red liquid sprayed out like a fountain and crashed toward Shen Qingyun. Saber dance. Saber light poured down. In the blink of an eye, the blood-red fountain was slashed into pieces, and it transformed into blood energy that covered the sky. It mixed with white mist and suddenly covered the entire sky. The blood woman flapped her wings again when she saw this scene, and her figure was completely submerged into the blood energy and white mist. She couldn't be seen clearly. Shit! Shen Qingyun frowned slightly when she noticed this, and she couldn't help but gnash her teeth. That thing's combat intelligence is shockingly high. According to their understanding, those blood women were clearly formed from the energy of divine perception, and they should be inanimate objects without intelligence. However, Blood Maiden's combat intelligence caused them to tremble with fear. Even an ordinary person might not possess such natural talent. Everyone be careful. Lin Ye's heartbeat suddenly sped up, and he was extremely nervous as he hurriedly warned them. Swish! Swish! Almost as soon as Lin Ye's voice fell, the boiling blood qi below them turned into several sharp arrows of blood qi, and with lightning speed, they fiercely pierced towards Lin Yi and the others. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 653. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The blood-red arrows were extremely sharp and pierced through the air toward Lin Yi and the rest. Oh no! Feeling the sharp attack, Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. She quickly raised her hand and the whistling divine thought power immediately turned into an invisible light screen to protect everyone. Bang, bang, bang! However, the divine thought light screen was as though it was nothing under the attack of the blood-red arrows. It was almost instantly penetrated. Poof! The divine thought light screen collapsed and Qin Yu's mind was affected. Her body trembled and blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Her face was pale and her body was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing this, Lin Yi took a step forward and hurriedly supported Qin Yu. Looking at the blood-colored arrows that were charging over, his expression was extremely solemn. D**Eminent everyone, let's do it together. Feeling the sharp aura, Feng Tianyi and the rest were extremely shocked. Even though they were injured, they each mobilized their divine thought power. In the face of death, being injured was not worth mentioning. Leave it to me. Lin Yi stepped forward and held the devouring heaven mirror in one hand. he poured all the saint energy in his body into it. With the injection of saint energy, the devouring heaven mirror suddenly released a milky white light screen. It flickered with lightning and suddenly enveloped Lin Yi and the rest. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the blood-red arrows whizzed over and suddenly collided with the milky white light screen in front of everyone's horrified eyes. However, to everyone's surprise, when the blood-red arrows collided with the light screen, there was no explosion. Instead, a milky white light bloomed and stimulated everyone's eyes. A moment later, when everyone opened their eyes again, they saw that the blood-colored arrows that filled the sky had already entered the light curtain. What's going on? Feng Tianyi and the rest were stunned as they stared blankly at Lin Yi. Those blood-red arrows earlier were extremely sharp. Even they were not confident that they would be able to withstand it. However, Lin Yi easily neutralized their attacks, which shocked them. At this time, Shen Qingyun, who was brandishing her saber qi in the air, also felt that something was wrong. She quickly descended, glanced at Lin Yi and the others, and suddenly shouted. In an instant, the biting cold saber qi danced and condensed into a circular saber shield, protecting Lin Yi and the others. That guy is a little cunning. Wait for me to kill it, then get ready to attack. With a shout, Shen Qingyun leaped up again. Saber qi whistled in the air, and saber shadows covered the sky as they fell. Hiss! They're both invincible saints, but senior sister Shen is really strong. Seeing this, Toyota sighed. He was also an invincible saint and a level 57 divine sense expert. However, he was still powerless against Shen Qingyun. He was no match for her. Lin Yi was also surprised. He did not expect Shen Qingyun to be so powerful when she unleashed her full strength. Feeling the protection of the sharp saber qi, Lin Yi also calmed down. His eyes flashed as he looked at the Blood Lady. Under their feet, blood-red arrows kept flying out. However, before they could get close to Lin Yi and the others, they were cut in half by the sharp saber qi. For a moment, they were safe. Looking up at the sky, they could vaguely see Shen Qingyun waving the saber qi all over the sky and constantly colliding with a figure. Strong shock waves kept spreading out. Roar! Blood surged, and the white mist that filled the sky had a blood-red glow. Immediately, it turned into a giant beast. Roar! The giant beast roared at the sky, waved its claws, and slammed into the air. The violent power caused the entire space to tremble. Seeing this scene, Lin Yi and the others could not help but be surprised. The Blood Lady had too many tricks up her sleeve. She was too terrifying. As a result, they did not dare to believe that it was an existence formed by divine sense. Lin Yi and the others stared at the sky, feeling very worried. If by any chance Shen Qingyun was defeated, they would be finished. Based on the current situation, the Blood Lady had many tricks up her sleeve and was very powerful. They were no match for her at all, unless they could recover to their peak state and still have the strength to fight. No, we can't watch like this anymore. After a long while, Feng Tianyi and the other injured disciples gritted their teeth and sat cross-legged in the sky to recover their divine sense power. Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the others were still staring nervously at the sky. One by one, the blood-colored giants appeared and began to frantically slap the air. Among the blood-red giants and the Blood Lady, Shen Qingyun was like a long saber. She was fearless and kept colliding with them. The entire space kept trembling, resulting in a shockwave. A moment later, a sharp saber aura soared into the sky and exploded in a spiral, instantly tearing a few blood-red giants into pieces. The battle became more intense. The blood-red giants, the surging sea of blood, the blood-red arrows, the blood-red explosions, and the attacks that Lin Yi and the others could not see kept colliding with Shen Qingyun. Lin Yi and the others could only wait for the battle to end in silence. An hour later, in the sky, a burst of bright icy blue light suddenly burst out. A strong saber aura spread in all directions. This is Senior Sister Shen's strongest attack. Feng Tian clenched his fists in excitement when he sensed the sharp saber aura spreading in the air. It's that powerful? Lin Yi frowned. He could not help but be surprised. Roar! A dragon's roar suddenly sounded. The sharp saber aura turned into a huge, icy blue dragon. Roar, roar, roar! The huge, icy blue dragon roared and circled in the sky. It immediately lunged at the Blood Lady. Innocuous saber, the saber strikes innocuously. As the cold shout sounded, the violent saber aura madly gathered. In the blink of an eye, it had sealed the entire space. For a moment, Shen Qingyun, the Blood Lady, and the many blood-red giants were trapped together. Buzz! In the next moment, the violent saber aura stirred violently, causing the entire space to tremble. A bright blue light and an ear-piercing dragon's roar filled the entire space. Even Lin Yi could not help but close his eyes. The dragon's roar and the violent saber aura lasted for more than 30 breaths before it ended. For a moment, the world was silent. Whether it was the tiger's roar of the saber aura or the sound of boiling blood, all of it disappeared. Only the rapid breathing of Lin Yi and the others could be heard. Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. When he looked up, he could not help but be stunned. He saw that the blood fog and white fog in the sky had disappeared without a trace. The sea of blood on the ground had also disappeared. Only 2 figures were left. One of them was covered in blood. The 3 pairs of blood-red wings on his back were on the verge of falling. The other figure was surrounded by several sharp sabers. A biting cold aura soared into the sky. End of chapter. Chapter 654. Gasp, so powerful! Seeing this, Toyota Qinyu and the rest were stunned and could not help but gasp. They did not think that Shen Qingyun's strength was actually so formidable. Kacha! Kacha! A crisp sound was heard. In the next moment, the Blood Lady in the sky shattered and turned into countless blood-red blood that scattered on the ground. Noticing this, Shen Qingyun sighed softly. The blades on her body dissipated, and she quickly landed beside Lin Yi. Her face was pale and she looked haggard. Seeing Shen Qingyun's complexion, Lin Ye's heart ached and he quickly held Shen Qingyun. "Senior Sister Shen, are you all right?" Toyota and the rest quickly asked. As for the Blood Lady, they did not care about it anymore. "I'm fine. I just used too much strength," Shen Qingyun said bitterly. "I used the innocuous blade twice in a row to defeat it. I have to rest for a while." "Oh right." Shen Qingyun suddenly grabbed Lin Ye's arm and said in a low voice, "The Blood Lady is not completely dead yet. Quickly use your divine telekinesis attacks to destroy it completely." "Okay." Hearing this, Toyota and Qin Yu quickly got up and unleashed their strongest divine telekinesis power to crush the blood. Buzz. However, when the divine telekinesis attacks landed and crushed the blood, there was no reaction. What's going on?" Seeing this scene, Toyota and Qin Yu both frowned, extremely surprised. D***, I don't believe it. Gritting their teeth, Toyota and Qin Yu gave it their all. Their divine telekinesis power was like a stone mill, crushing the blood. Boom, boom, boom. However, no matter how hard they tried, their divine telekinesis power could not cause any damage to the blood. They could only watch helplessly as the blood gradually churned and gathered together. In an instant, Toyota and Qin Yu were anxious. Once the blood gathered together again, the Blood Lady would be formed again. Moreover, they couldn't be sure if the Blood Woman would become even more powerful after she took form. At this moment, Shen Qingyun was extremely weak, and she couldn't do anything at all. If Blood Maiden was allowed to take form once more, then all of them might perish here. "No, we are disciples of Sibu Gakuin. If we can't even pass through a heavenly saint relic, how can we survive in the future?" Gritting their teeth, Toyota and Qin Yu both used their trump cards. Not far away, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun were also looking at them nervously. Seeing that Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu were unable to cause any damage to the blood, the two of them were also extremely worried. No, I can't drag this on any longer. Shen Qingyun gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, I can't recover my fighting strength in a short time. Junior brother Lin, do you have any ideas? At this critical moment, Shen Qingyun bit her lips and looked straight at Lin Yi. Previously, when they were in danger, even when they were in the heavenly saint realm, it was Lin Yi who came up with the idea. Therefore, Shen Qingyun placed all her hopes on Lin Yi. It could be said that she trusted Lin Yi very much. This, after hesitating for a moment, Lin Yi saw the blood gathering together and felt his scalp go numb. Looking around, Lin Yi suddenly thought of the existence of the Heaven's Will Fan. The Heaven's Will Fan could convert the power of divine thought into the power of element. Perhaps it could evaporate the blood. At this point, Lin Yi didn't hesitate anymore. He immediately let go of Shen Qingyun and jumped in front of Qing Yu and Toyota E. You two go and take care of senior sister Shen. Leave these dirty things to me. After taking a deep breath, Lin Yi immediately summoned the Heaven's Will Fan. 1. As soon as the Heaven's Will Fan appeared, it started to absorb the remaining power of divine thought in Lin Ye's body and rippled with a special fluctuation. Sensing the fluctuation of the power of divine thought, Toyota E and Qing Yu hesitated for a moment and then retreated to take care of Shen Qingyun. Of course, they didn't dare to support Shen Qingyun. They just protected Shen Qingyun and looked nervously at Lin Yi. In their eyes, the Heaven's Will Fan in Lin Ye's hand gradually changed color. A crimson flame quietly emerged from the Heaven's Will Fan. With a soft cry, Lin Yi injected all the power of divine thought in his body into the Heaven's Will Fan. The Heaven's Will Fan shone with a crimson light. In the next moment, flames suddenly surged in the sky and turned into a sea of fire that suddenly burned the entire space. The scorching temperature roasted the surprised Toyota E and the others. Their power of divine thought was invisible, but now they were surprised to find that the flame summoned by Lin Yi actually contained the power of divine thought. They were instantly shocked. At this time, Lin Yi also realized that the Heaven's Will Fan was the same as the person who left behind this relic. It could transform the power of divine thought into any form. He was also surprised. Could it be that there was some connection between the Heaven's Will Fan and this relic? However, doubts aside, Lin Yi still activated the Heaven's Will Fan with all his might and urged the flames that contained the power of divine thought to roast the blood. Gulp, gulp. Not long after, his blood boiled. Under the intense heat, it actually turned into a mist that filled the sky and dissipated in the air. After 10 minutes, the remaining blood disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, Shen Qingyun, Toyota E and the others couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Blood Lady's death meant that their crisis was over. They could rest for a while to adjust their condition. More importantly, after Blood Lady's death, the rich power of divine thought dissipated again. This time, the power of divine thought was even thicker than before. It was many times thicker than before. Even Lin Yi was tempted by the offer. If the power of divine thought was given to him, he might be able to recover his power of level 35. Even if it was given to others, they might be able to break through a level. Phew. Not bad. It was worth it to spend so much effort. Lin Yi sighed softly. After confirming that Blood Lady was dead, he immediately put away the Heaven's Will Fan. His entire body felt extremely sore and numb, and he almost fell to the ground. Feeling the empty power of divine thought in his body, Lin Yi felt helpless. The Heaven's Will Fan was powerful, but it consumed too much power of divine thought. The power of level 34 power of divine thought was only maintained for a dozen breaths before it was completely drained. Stop cultivating. Quickly absorb the power of divine thought and recover. Lin Yi called out softly and immediately asked the others to absorb the power of divine thought. Shen Qingyun laughed softly and looked at Lin Ye's satisfied face. Her eyes were full of smiles. Soon, the 8 of them frantically absorbed the power of divine thought in the air. The surging power of divine thought was so dense that it condensed into a light screen that protected them. Sensing this, Lin Yi was no longer worried about Shen Qingyun's safety. He immediately calmed his mind and began to cultivate. End of chapter. Chapter 655. The surging divine sense aura surged and continuously poured into Lin Yi and the others, enhancing their divine sense power. At the side, Shen Qingyun's eyes were closed tightly as she recovered from her injuries. After an hour, all the divine sense aura was absorbed by Lin Yi and the others. Almost everyone had a significant improvement. Lin Ye's divine sense was restored to rank 35, while Feng Tianyi broke through to rank 58. His strength was more than twice as strong as before. The rest were also close to a breakthrough and only needed an opportunity. Only Shen Qingyun's previous injuries were too serious and she still had not recovered. After the cultivation, Lin Yi got up and was about to wake Shen Qingyun up. However, he found that after the divine sense aura in the air dissipated, the white fog was gathering towards them. In just a few breaths, the white fog had gathered into a thick fog. It was so thick that it blocked the vision of Lin Yi and the others. Oh no, what's going on? Feng Tianyi and the others' faces changed drastically. They quickly leaned back to back and looked extremely nervous. The Blood Lady had already caused them so much trouble. If more mysterious monsters appeared, they were not confident in dealing with them. Damn it, how could this be? Everyone, be careful. Feng Tianyi and Qing Yu quickly reminded everyone. Lin Yi directly pulled Shen Qingyun to his side and stared at the fog. Soon, Lin Ye's face became strange. He suddenly found that the white fog contained the aura of space. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Invisible waves bloomed and quietly dispersed the white fog around Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi and the others. Lin Yi and the others looked at each other curiously. Even Shen Qingyun withdrew from her cultivation and looked at the white fog in confusion. Buzz. Suddenly, the divine sense imprints in Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's bodies floated out again. They were suspended in the air and reflected the white fog. Blood-red and milky white lights gradually lit up, shocking everyone. Hoo hoo hoo! The white mist suddenly gathered and condensed into a book. It then turned into countless glowing figures that entered Lin Ye's divine sense imprint. Shwa! The white mist completely dissipated, and the 2 divine sense imprints quickly flew back into Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun's bodies. All of a sudden, Lin Yi and Shen Qingyun felt a warm current flowing through their bodies. Their depleted energy, be it divine sense or saint energy, were all restored to their peak condition. This was especially true for Lin Yi, whose mind was filled with many insights. That secret manual was deeply engraved in Lin Ye's heart. Lin Ye's body trembled as he sensed the secret manual. Noticing this, Shen Qingyun quickly broke free from Lin Ye's protection. She waved to Feng Tianyi and the others, asking them to protect Lin Yi. At the same time, all the insights in Lin Ye's mind were madly integrated into Lin Ye's spirit and memory. After a long time, Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. He stretched out his right hand, and a small ball of blood-red liquid condensed from divine sense appeared on his index finger. Drip! The blood-red liquid flew out and turned into a goshawk. It hovered in the air and released a surge of divine sense. Seeing this, Feng Tianyi and the others were stunned. Their mouths were slightly open, and their faces were full of disbelief. They could not believe that Lin Yi had mastered the method of using divine sense to transform into other forms. What surprised them even more was that Lin Ye's method seemed to be similar to the giant beasts and blood women from before. He also used divine sense to transform into blood and then into other forms. Go! At this point, Feng Tianyi and the others could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that after defeating Blood Woman, they could learn Blood Woman's ability? No matter how they guessed, Feng Tianyi and the others were full of jealousy towards Lin Yi. They understood that this opportunity had been taken away by Lin Yi. Phew, exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Lin Yi was also very surprised. He did not expect that after defeating Blood Woman, he would obtain the secret manual of the Five Spirits' divine technique, the Blood Soul Scroll. Ahem! After coming to his senses, Lin Yi coughed and said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, brothers. I didn't expect that secret manual to directly enter my mind. Next time, if I encounter something good, I won't fight with you for it. It's okay." Hearing Lin Ye's words, Feng Tianyi and the others were very depressed, but they could not say anything. They could only smile and say that it was okay. Buzz! Another violent tremor appeared, and a door of light appeared out of thin air in front of Lin Yi and the others. The sudden appearance of the door of light shocked Lin Yi and the others, and they took a few steps back. Frowning slightly, Lin Yi and the others carefully sensed the door of light and found that it contained the power of space. They could not help but look at each other suspiciously. Blood Woman has been killed by us. This door of light is very likely to be the passage to the next trial location. Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "This heavenly saint relic is very strange. This time, we'd better go in together, lest we fall into the illusion again." "Okay." Shin Qingyun nodded slightly. Feng Tianyi and the others looked at each other and nodded in agreement. Previously, they were almost trapped in the illusion and were unable to come out. It was all thanks to Lin Yi, Shin Qingyun, and the others that they were saved. Therefore, they wouldn't refuse. If they were trapped again, that would be fun. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi, Shen Qingyun, and the others jumped up together and rushed into the door of light. Swoosh! After Lin Yi and the others entered the door of light, the white door of light suddenly dissipated. The entire space suddenly rotated and squeezed, like a ball of water being kneaded into a ball. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The next moment, the ball flickered with a crystal blue light and rippled with a special energy wave. When Lin Yi and the others opened their eyes again, what appeared in front of them was an endless purple-green light. Those lights were not like the white mist that filled the entire world. Instead, they formed countless light balls that floated in the air. In an instant, Lin Yi and the others were very surprised. They carefully sized up those purple-green lights. Looking around, the ground was full of green stone bricks with various patterns carved on them. Some were whirlwinds, some were thunderbolts, and they were arranged neatly. "Everyone, be careful." Sensing the abnormality of the green stone bricks, Lin Yi immediately reminded everyone, "There may be something wrong with these stone bricks. Everyone, don't move." Hearing that, Shen Qingyun, Qin Yu, Feng Tianyi, and the others did not dare to move. They used their divine senses to sense the world around them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, there seemed to be a breeze. Those purple-green lights in the air flew in front of everyone like dandelions. End of chapter. Chapter 656. What's going on? Lin Yi and the rest were stunned when they saw the purplish-green light floating over. They looked at each other in astonishment. "Be careful." Fang Yuanping looked at the ball of light floating in front of him and couldn't help but reach out to touch it curiously. Crackle! However, the moment Fang Yuanping's finger touched the purplish-green light ball, a violent thunderbolt energy bloomed like an explosion. The surging shockwave erupted and almost sent Lin Yi and the rest flying. "What's going on? Fang Yuanping, are you courting death?" In an instant, Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the rest were shocked. They hurriedly protected themselves and blocked the strong wind. After the strong wind dissipated, Lin Yi and the rest looked up and their mouths twitched violently. Fang Yuanping's body was charred black and his hair stood up. Under the charred skin, there were countless wounds. However, the thunderbolt was too strong and the blood in the wounds had coagulated, turning them into scars. The purplish-green light contains the power of Thunderbolt? Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the rest looked at each other and frowned. No. Qin Yu said in a deep voice, why do I feel that it's still the power of divine telekinesis? That's right. It's Thunderbolt condensed from the power of divine telekinesis. Lin Yi touched his nose and sighed. The Blood Ladies and the giant beasts were all condensed from the power of divine telekinesis. The same goes for the Thunderbolt. Phew, if that's the case, the Thunderbolt territory in our territory is useless. It's really a good technique. Although Thunderbolts weren't commonly used, there were many warriors who had a strong understanding of Thunderbolts and could reduce the damage caused by Thunderbolt. However, in this ruin, Thunderbolts were formed from the power of divine telekinesis and were completely useless. No matter who came, the Thunderbolts could cause the greatest damage to them. Puff! Just as Lin Yi and the rest were observing the purplish-green light, Fang Yuanping opened his mouth slightly and spat out a mouthful of black gas. He also woke up. Yuanping, are you okay? Seeing this, Toyota E immediately asked. Fang Yuanping didn't dare touch the purplish-green ball of light again. He quickly replied, I'm fine. The power of the lightning isn't very strong. I can withstand it. It's just that it will numb you for a moment. As he spoke, Fang Yuanping jumped back a few steps, getting closer to Lin Yi and the others. At this time, Fang Yuanping looked at the purplish-green light that continued to drift over, fear still lingering on his face. Be careful, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. There are a lot of these light balls, and they are all different in size and brightness. I feel that their power will also be different. Who knows, we might encounter a particularly strong one. Fortunately, their speed is not very fast. With our strength, as long as we are careful, we can easily avoid them. Yes. Toyota E and the others nodded slightly. There isn't much of a problem with the purplish-green orbs. Now, let's see what's wrong with these bricks. Lin Yi pondered for a moment. He looked at everyone and said in a deep voice, the bricks we're stepping on now are engraved with Thunderbolt. It can be seen that the Thunderbolt pattern slate is very safe. Moreover, these bricks are arranged in a very regular pattern. They are almost composed of countless 9 square squares. Each row and column has a Thunderbolt pattern. So when we leave later, try to step on the Thunderbolt bricks as much as possible. Then where should we go? Toyota E looked around and sighed. There are purplish-green lights floating in all directions. There's no end in sight, and we can't see the distance clearly. This, rolling his eyes, Lin Yi said in a deep voice. The last level was a crisis hidden in the white fog. In my opinion, there won't be many changes this time. There must be more traps and dangers hidden in this space, waiting for us. Don't think too much. Just go straight. Touching his nose, Lin Yi jumped onto the next brick engraved with thunderbolts. Seeing this scene, Shin Qingyun, Toyota E and the others were stunned and their mouths twitched. A dignified saint was actually jumping and walking, which made them speechless. Why aren't you following? After jumping for a moment, Lin Yi didn't hear any sound. When he turned back and saw Shin Qingyun and the others standing there in a daze, he immediately shouted, Ahem! In an instant, Shin Qingyun, Qin Yue, and Toyota E looked at each other and could only helplessly follow Lin Yi. They kept jumping and stepping on the thunderbolt bricks, following Lin Ye's direction. Along the way, the purplish-green light drifted, but the speed was quite slow. Lin Yi and the others paid a little attention and almost couldn't touch it. After jumping for about a kilometer, Lin Yi and the others didn't encounter anything. Everything was safe and sound. However, Lin Yi and the others didn't notice that the purplish-green light in the air drifted a little faster than before. Another hour passed. Lin Yi and the others went deeper and deeper. The purplish-green light around them gradually became bigger and brighter. Lin Yi and the others still didn't encounter anything and were surprised. This shouldn't be. Since it was a relic and a test, there must be traps or dangers. Why was there no change after so long? No. Lin Yi suddenly stopped, looked around, and said in a deep voice, "Have you noticed that the aura around us seems to have changed a lot?" Change? Hearing this, Toyota Chinyue and the others were surprised. Their pupils shrank suddenly and they stared around. Around them, countless purplish-green light drifted. There was nothing else except for that. It seems that nothing has changed. One of Toyota Yi's men whispered, "No, the color of the stone bricks on the ground seems to have become darker than before. It's not just the stone bricks, but also the color of the light." Lin Yi said in a deep voice, "I keep feeling that something is watching us." Watching us? Hearing this, Toyota and the others' faces changed drastically. They looked around in a panic. 4 people, the unknown was the most frightening thing. No? Junior brother Lin, could it be that you sensed wrongly? After looking around, Toyota and the others didn't find anything and were surprised. No. There must be something wrong. Lin Ye's eyes darted around as his expression turned grave. Shin Qinyan suddenly said, "Me too, I feel like we're being spied on." Spied on? The corners of their mouths twitched. Toyota Chinyue and the others were puzzled. However, if it was only Lin Yi, they could say that they sensed wrongly. Shin Qinyan was powerful. If even she said that there was something wrong, they believed a lot. "Wait a minute." Frowning slightly, Lin Yi suddenly whispered, "We've been looking around just now. Could that thing be in the sky?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi suddenly raised his head, and his pupils suddenly shrank. End of chapter. Chapter 657. "Oh no!" Lin Yi exclaimed. His expression changed drastically, and his pupils contracted as he stared at the sky. "What's going on?" Suddenly hearing Lin Ye's cry of surprise, Shin Qinyan and the others hurriedly raised their heads. All of them sucked in a breath of cold air and revealed astonished expressions. High up in the sky, there was a giant purple-green bird hanging upside down every 100 feet. Those giant purple-green birds were huge, almost as tall as a person. Their eyes were closed, and their bodies were flashing with lightning and green light. They looked quite strange. Damn it! What kind of monsters are these? Seeing those giant purple-green birds, Feng Tianyi and the rest were shocked. It seems that these monsters are not demonic beasts of the present world. They are all condensed from the power of divine sense. Lin Yi frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "In my opinion, these giant purple-green birds are the test this time. I wonder if we can get the divine thought aura after defeating them." Speaking of this, Toyota Chinyu and the others licked their lips and revealed excited expressions. The divine thought aura would greatly enhance their strength. At the thought of this, they even forgot about the danger. "Junior brother Lin, why don't we lure one of them and see how strong they are?" Feng Fengyi's eyes turned as he looked at the purple-green giant bird in the sky, his eyes filled with greed. "Let's see how strong they are." Nodding slightly, Lin Yi did not refuse. Immediately, the 9 of them jumped and surrounded one of the giant purple-green birds. "I'll go first." Feng Tianyi took a deep breath. His divine thought power suddenly turned into an invisible sharp blade and pierced toward the giant purple-green bird. Screech! Almost at the moment when the divine thought blade pierced the giant purple-green bird, a screech suddenly sounded. The next moment, a surging sound wave rippled and swept across the sky. "Oh no!" Suddenly, Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun's faces changed slightly. They had an ominous premonition in their hearts. Screech! Screech! Suddenly, a few more screeches rang out, causing everyone to be greatly shocked. When they raised their heads to look, the corners of Lin Yi and the others' mouths immediately twitched violently. Their faces were filled with despair. More than 10 giant purple-green birds could be seen flapping their wings and circling in the air. Their sharp eyes were like the hooks of an eagle as they stared at them. "Damn it, we only alarmed one giant purple-green bird. Why are there so many of them?" The corner of Feng Toyota's mouth twitched, and he quickly took a few steps back. If the purplish-green birds were as strong as Blood Maiden, then they might not be a match for a dozen of them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At the same time, the purplish-green light floating in the air suddenly sped up. It was several times faster than before. Motherf **, what's going on? When it rains, it pours. Noticing this, Toyota Chinyu and the others couldn't help but reveal sorrowful expressions. Everything had come together. Screech. The screeches rang out again, and a strong gust of wind swept over. Several glowing purplish-green hurricanes gathered and rapidly fell towards Lin Yi and the others. Ah! Zheng Zhongyu shouted softly and suddenly stood up. He waved his fists and punched at the hurricanes that were falling rapidly. Let me test their strength first. Ice Fire Divine Fist. As Zheng Zhongyu shouted, red flames flickered on his left hand, and light blue ice crystals condensed on his right hand. Then, they collided violently with the hurricanes. Crackle, crackle! However, almost at the moment when Zheng Zhongyu's hands collided with the hurricanes, a strong and violent thunderbolt bloomed and struck Zheng Zhongyu. In the shrill screams, Zheng Zhongyu was struck by the thunderbolt. His entire body turned black, and his meridians and limbs were filled with thunderbolt. He was extremely paralyzed and couldn't move. Damn it! Hurry up and save him! Seeing this, Lin Yi, Toyota E, and the others' faces changed dramatically, especially Toyota E. He immediately jumped up and waved his hands. The power of divine sense suddenly turned into a giant sword and pierced towards the hurricanes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! The hurricane whistled and tore apart Zheng Zhongyu's skin with a swish. In the next moment, a violent energy erupted. Like a cannonball, it suddenly sent Zheng Zhongyu flying. He landed heavily on the ground, causing the ground to tremble violently. Boom! At the same time, the giant sword formed by the power of divine sense slashed at the hurricanes. The hurricanes stopped spinning abruptly, and in the next moment, they collapsed and turned into nothingness. Their strength is not even at rank 50. I can only use my divine sense to deal with them, Toyota E shouted softly. His hands formed a seal, and the power of divine sense in the air suddenly turned into dozens of invisible sharp blades, piercing towards the purplish-green giant birds. Crackle, crackle! However, Toyota E, who was focused on controlling the power of divine sense, forgot to dodge the purplish-green light balls. The 3 light balls were like magnets attracted by a magnet. They landed on Toyota Yi's body with a bang, and a strong thunderbolt force suddenly bloomed. Ah! Even though Toyota E had a rank 58 power of divine sense, the moment he was struck by the thunderbolt, he was momentarily stunned. It was at that moment that the attack formed by the power of divine sense in the air paused for a moment. The purplish-green giant birds seized the opportunity and immediately scattered, and immediately let out a shrill cry. Screech! The shrill cry suddenly sounded, and a strong sound wave suddenly swept out and spread out. It seemed to have the power to sweep across the 4 seas and the world. Phew! Toyota E shook his head violently and quickly recovered from the state of paralysis. He exhaled a mouthful of smoke and immediately shouted coldly, "They are not very strong. Attack, quickly finish them off." However, just as Toyota Yi's voice fell, he heard shrill cries coming one after another, constantly ringing in his ears. Looking up, Toyota E, Lin Yi, and Shen Qingyun's faces suddenly stiffened. Zheng Zhongyu, who had just recovered, looked up and his face turned pale again. He simply lay on the ground again. In the air, a dense swarm of purplish-green giant birds appeared, flapping their wings and letting out shrill cries. Their eyes were fixed on Lin Yi and the others. Hundreds of purplish-green giant birds attacked together. The surging power of divine sense superimposed together, and it actually made Lin Yi and the others pale. Hundreds of purplish-green giant birds formed by the power of divine sense. Lin Yi, Toyota Yi, and the others looked at each other and swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Their faces were extremely embarrassed. Well, why don't we surrender? Toyota Yi wanted to cry but had no tears. Isn't this too much? End of chapter. Chapter 658. Screech. Screeching sounds were heard continuously. In the next moment, the surging spiritual force attacks surged toward Lin Yi and the rest like a tidal wave. Feng Tianyi stopped joking around. With a long roar, the spiritual force in his body surged out wildly without any hindrance. There were hundreds of spiritual force flying birds. If he did not give it his all, he would be finished if he was killed. Qing Yu and the rest did the same. They unleashed their strongest powers and collided with the spiritual force wave. Lin Yi and Shin Qingyun did not have spiritual force and could only watch in silence. Although Shin Qingyun's saber Dao could hurt those monsters, her power had to be spent on her saber. It was not time for her to strike yet. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, invisible explosions erupted in the air. Strong winds surged and swept in all directions. Although there were many spiritual force flying birds, they were too weak after all. After resisting the first wave of attacks, Qing Yu and Fang Yuanping used their spiritual force to protect everyone. Feng Tianyi and the rest continued to kill the spiritual force flying birds. At this moment, Zheng Zhongyu also jumped up from the ground and joined in the attack. Feng Tianyi and the rest had the lowest spiritual force of rank 56. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with a single spiritual force flying bird. Thus, following the sound of explosions, the divine telekinesis birds were killed one after another, turning into a cloud of divine telekinesis chi that remained in the air. Seeing this, Lin Yi, Feng Tianyi, and the rest were ecstatic. In an instant, they became more motivated. Without Feng Tianyi's urging, everyone gave it their all. Under the frenzied attacks of the group, in just a dozen breaths, hundreds of spiritual force flying birds had turned into spiritual force aura. Ha ha ha! I didn't expect that although there were many spiritual force flying birds, they were so weak. Although they were weak, they contributed a lot of spiritual force aura. Amidst the laughter, Feng Tianyi and the rest looked around. After realizing that there were no surviving spiritual force flying birds, they immediately began to absorb the spiritual force aura. Half an hour later, the divine sense aura in the air had been completely absorbed, and everyone in Feng Tianyi's group had recovered to their peak state. Junior brother Lin, let's continue forward. There must be more spiritual sense birds ahead. If I kill more of them, I'll be able to break through. Everyone was extremely excited. Although the divine sense aura was not a treasure, it could increase their cultivation level. Its effect was even stronger than that of a treasure. After all, treasures were only external forces. One's own realm was something that would never change. Wait. Lin Ye's expression was grave as he suddenly said, "Everyone, be careful. There are changes here again." Hearing this, Feng Toyota Yi and the others were surprised. They frowned and looked around, then stared at Lin Yi. They did not notice any unusual changes. Lin Yi didn't care about the other people's gazes. He just scanned the surroundings. He had examined the sky and the surroundings, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, he had an ominous feeling in his heart. Junior brother Lin, we've already taken care of the spiritual sense birds. Why is there still something out of place? If that's the case, the purplish-green light blobs in the air have grown a little bigger. It seems that their power will increase with the passage of time. Yes, and their speed is getting faster and faster. Feng Tianyi rolled his eyes and said in a deep voice, "We have to end this quickly. If the light blobs are so fast that we can't dodge them and are paralyzed by them indefinitely, I'm afraid that any spiritual sense bird will be able to kill us." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Tianyi and the others stared at Lin Yi with strange expressions. Obviously, they wanted to continue the chase. At the same time, Lin Yi also realized what the problem was. He turned his head and swept his gaze across the ground. Lin Yi immediately gasped as his gaze swept across the ground. His face was full of solemnity. Look, there are now some crystals between the stone bricks. Lin Yi suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the stone bricks on the ground. He said in a deep voice, "Purple light is beginning to appear in those crystals. I think, when the crystals are full, something big will happen. If we don't understand these crystals, we can't continue." Hearing this, Shen Qingyun, Feng Tianyi, and the others frowned and looked carefully. Only then did they realize that Lin Yi was talking about the crystals. Their breathing suddenly quickened. "What are these? I don't remember these things existing before." "That's right," Fang Yuanping and the others murmured. "The stone bricks were so clean before. There was nothing there. Why did they suddenly appear?" "According to my speculation, the purple light in these crystals should have appeared after the spiritual sense birds were killed. However, if we want to confirm this, we have to kill more of them." Rolling his eyes, Lin Yi waved his hand and said, "Let's continue forward. Let's kill a few more spiritual sense birds and see what's the connection between them and the purple crystals." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi took the lead and continued jumping forward. Although Shen Qingyun and the others were very reluctant, they were not sure what was wrong with the stone bricks on the ground. They did not want to try, so they could only jump forward. After jumping like this for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, everyone had already jumped 5 kilometers away. Not far away, there were no purple crystals on the stone bricks on the ground. Looking up, they saw countless spiritual sense birds hanging upside down in the sky. "Just as I thought." Lin Yi frowned and said in a low voice, "Those purple crystals are indeed related to the spiritual sense birds. As long as we kill them, the purple crystals will appear on the ground. But why are those purple crystals not complete? Why are they only half complete? We have clearly killed all the spiritual sense birds. Why are there still half?" Hearing Lin Ye's words, Feng Tianyi and the others looked at the spiritual sense birds hanging upside down in the sky and fell into deep thought. Could it be that we killed them wrongly? Fang Yuanping touched his nose. "Just now we attacked randomly. If we killed them wrongly, there should be even fewer purple crystals." Feng Tianyi frowned and pondered for a moment, then said, "Why don't we kill all the spiritual sense birds in this area too? Let's give it a try." Lin Yi nodded slightly and said, "I'd like to see what those purple crystals are." As soon as his voice fell, Feng Toigui did not hold back. With a slight movement of his mind, the power of his divine sense once again turned into a spike and pierced towards the divine sense flying bird that was suspended in the air. Screech! 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 The next moment there was a sudden roar. The surging power of divine sense was like a storm, crazily falling, crushing Feng Tianyi and the others. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.